You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, particularly those above the age of 35, it is Friday evening. It's 7 p.m. Therefore, it's time for The Race with Time with your host, the one and only beautiful Crystal Clark, and the handsome, debonair, and dashing James C. Horick. And you got it, folks.
That was a good introduction. How come we didn't join Wolf Spirit Radio sooner? Thanks very much, Dave. That was very kind of you. Well, first of all, it's 2014, our first show of 2014. I think 2014 will be a very good year, so Happy New Year to everyone. I know that we do have some new listeners. So just really quick, our show airs, we only do 2 shows a month right now. We are looking at adding another show or 2, and of course we'll keep people posted if that happens. But our shows air every second and fourth Friday of the month from 7 to 9 p.m. on Wolf Spirit Radio. The shows are live. We do have some friends and colleagues who put these shows out on YouTube for free about a week after we do these shows. But if you're one of those people that really prefers the MP3, you'll have to subscribe to Wolf Spirit Radio to download those. Dave's rates are good, and I would ask that you support him in what he's doing, because he supports us and we try to support an awful lot of other people. So it's a big, long chain, and we appreciate anything that you can do to help us. My website is drowninginabsurdity.wordpress.com. James's website is emvsinfo.blogspot.com. So any references we might make to previous episodes that we've done or articles that have been written can be found on either one of those websites. We both have a search mechanism at the top of the website, so you can just type in whatever you're looking for and find it. Because this is the beginning of a new year, this is actually our 6th episode, but a lot of people are actually just now catching on, and I know that we do have some new listeners, so I thought it might be helpful and important to explain why James and I do this together, because some people really enjoy it and some people don't understand it. It seems like kind of a strange team, and in a sense, I guess it kind of is, but not really. So I'm the one who contacted James. I think it was 2011. Does that sound right, James?
Yes.
It's been a couple of years. So I started doing this at the end of 2009, and by this I mean trying to explain that we've done this before. This is, we're on the verge of another self-destruction episode, another cataclysm. It's happened before, and that it's the abuse of our technology that causes it over and over and over. At the time, there was no one else who really understood this, and until I found James. James knew this. He understood this. Now, James will say that this is the 7th and final try. I just go with it because in my research I found references to 5 previous lineages, and then I came across Jerry Wills and his wife Kathy from Expeditions TV, and they did an expedition to Peru where there were these large stones. There were 6 of them, and they fit very tightly together. And it was his understanding that each one of these stones were meant to represent a previous lineage. So James says it's the 7th. I think that's about right. But so I just go with it. But it doesn't really matter if it's the 10th or the 20th or the 10,000th time, because I really have come to believe it's our last chance. And I say that because of all of the help that we're getting. We're getting an enormous amount of help, and I don't think we would if it wasn't our last chance. So I think that's really important. The other thing that James and I have in common is our reverence for intelligent design. Some people call it natural law. Some people call it creational design. I refer to it as the sacred science. Doesn't really matter what we call it. What matters is that we understand it as individuals. Not that our scientists understand it or pretend to understand it or tell us they understand it, but that we as individual human beings understand it. And this is really, really important, because if we don't understand it, we can't understand when somebody else is abusing it. We don't know how it works. And there's that saying, it's a biblical saying. I'm not a fan of religion myself, but there are in every religion, pearls of wisdom. And there's a really beautiful one in the Christian Bible that talks about my people perish for lack of knowledge. And this is true. This is absolutely true. And we've reached a point, again, for the 7th time, where people are participating in their own demise out of ignorance because they don't know any better. And of course we want to stop that. So James and I do what we do, and we do it together because we both are coming from the same place, the same understanding, that we are at the fork in the road, and that if we don't take the right path, that we're going to do what has been done 6 times. So that's our goal. That's the reason we call this show Race with Time, because it is a race with time. Now, actually, the actual name of the show is NWO Race with Time, and I forget to put that on there a lot. So if you're looking for the MP3, that's where you'll find it. But the other thing, too, though, as far as participating in our own demise out of ignorance, it's really not quite that simple. It's not just that we don't know. It's also that an awful lot of time and energy have went into making sure we wouldn't know. And the split consciousness, which James has talked about consistently, is what a lot of us refer to as cognitive dissonance in terms of the way it's exploited. And this is something that we really have to try to address, because, and James, I would like for you to add, your own 2 cents about this. But for me, the reason I do these shows, from that understanding that we will and are repeating the exact same pattern of the past, that if we can remove the blocks that prevent the individual from acting on their own best interests, that things will change. And in their own best interests, it's in everyone's best interests to the self-destruction episode. So this is what we're essentially trying to do with these shows, is look at where are people stuck? What are the roadblocks? The roadblocks that have been put there on purpose to derail people, from an outside source, as much as the roadblocks people put in front of themselves, whether it's fear or whatever. We want to try to eliminate those so that we can get to a place where every human being on this planet knows that they deserve a future and will grab a bucket and help bail to make it happen. So I think that's really, really super important, and that's really where we're coming from. So how do you feel about that, James?
Human beings are not naturally split. They're not naturally indecisive. They're not naturally ambivalent. It is not the nature of man to be unable to follow a course of reasoning or thought to its inevitable outcome once enough information is gleaned to show that probability is on the side of a particular inevitable outcome. But here on Earth, all these things operating in an unnatural way, as if they were subject to an external control, a control that was operating against the interests of the controlled. We talk about mind control, we talk about opinion forming. The media a long time ago incorporated opinion forming into its agenda, and ad campaigns became instrumented by the intention to form people's opinions for them over products they wanted to sell, and eventually it became over candidates in political campaigns, and now it is in the reality going on around you to make perceptions of that reality serve a particular agenda, and always against the interests of the individuals that are targeted. That's what we have today, and we have it done through a manipulation of this split consciousness, which has some downfalls. One is the ability to, or a disability that accrues to anyone that can be hypnotized. And another is not being able to follow a series of information bits to full ramification, which I see all the time. And another is to establish prematurely a comfort zone that can't be supported by a reality, and to tailor a reality that is less opposed to that particular comfort zone. And all of these things are counter to the individual that's being targeted. It's counter to their self-interest.
And although we've discussed this before, and people can go back and look at it, when we use the term split consciousness, what we're talking about is the conscious mind and the subconscious mind being at war with each other. So when we associate that with cognitive dissonance, what we're saying is, as James has explained, and he's absolutely right, the subconscious mind always wants to tell the truth. But through social engineering and perception management and having opinion forming, as you said, which opinion forming is really that those trying to manipulate your opinions and your perceptions have a predetermined outcome that they want you to meet them at, but believe that you chose it for yourself. So you're not really in control of your destiny. Somebody else is, but they're very, very clever in terms of how they manipulate perceptions to make people think they're doing what's in their own best interests when in fact they aren't. And so these two things really go together. So when we talk about cognitive dissonance, what you'll often find is you'll find people saying, well, yes, this is a good idea, we should do this. But in reality, that's not how they would react. That is absolutely not how they would react. And an example of this is, and the New Age movement exploits this in ways I really don't think people get. So the New Age movement says, well, look, you just have to look at it and process it, and that's all you have to do. That's it. You meditate on it, and it'll, it's somebody else's problem. But the reality of that is that any of these people, and I don't care who they are, if they have a child and the child breaks a leg, they don't go look at it, process it, and say, well, I'm not afraid of it, and go meditate all day. They take their child to the doctor and they get it fixed. This is an example of cognitive dissonance. It's a contradiction between what a person says they believe and what they would actually do in that situation. They're not the same thing. So, did you want to add anything to that, James?
Well, I think what's really what I'd like to point out is a little bit off the subject, but it has a great deal to do with how people's perceptions are managed and how certain things are kind of worked out of that consciousness that represents information they need to be wise. And the media, the mass media, I call it, has learned that it is more important about how the information is presented than what the information really is. And I'll give you a case in point, and this will demonstrate to you how you can be told something one moment, and the next moment that it just is removed as a factor in your thought or your thought process. About 10, 12 years ago, there was a report, and this was on major networks. It came up on the news, the early evening news, or 5, 6 o'clock news, that there was a lady that came into a hospital in California and was ill and had startling symptoms. They put her in ER immediately and decided that they would give her a saline solution due to the vacillation in her heartbeat, her breathing, and so forth. And the minute that a needle was stuck in a vein, this green vapor filled the ER and killed everyone in there. And then there was no mention of this afterwards, and it was lost from the public consciousness. As sensational as it was, then 2 weeks later it happened. The first incident occurred in Northern California, second in Southern California. Same thing entirely. 5 or 6 o'clock news, no mention of, no follow-up, nothing. And I've talked to people over the years, and I've said, do you remember this? Do you recall it? No, they didn't recall it. You can take a sensational story. I've noticed this in local papers and local TV networks, and you put it on the news 5 or 6 o'clock, and it's up before millions of people. Millions of people actually see it. But then again, it isn't repeated. It isn't reaffirmed. So it's as if it didn't exist. It didn't happen. Now, the media people know this, and if anyone really confronts them and says, what about this? You failed to report it. Don't you think it's sensational enough to be newsworthy? They'll tell you, oh, yes, we did. Oh, yes, we did. But you see, they really didn't. They knew by the way that they have handled the news and handled important stories before what they could make stick in what would be so fleeting it wouldn't really register. And that's what they did.
And I would add that, we've talked about psychic blocks before, and I think that this really has become the backbone of it. Because if the people that you've been taught to trust and believe for your news are not reaffirming what's important and sending you somewhere else, then that, I think, really, we can create psychic blocks too, don't you think? I mean, we can do it ourselves, but we have an awful lot of help, and I think that's another way that the split consciousness is exploited. What do you think?
Well, I think so. We know by every time that any issue arises locally that we know that business or the law enforcement or the political scene would find sensitive that it's handled. It maybe even be sanitized. And these are the terms they use. But we know from personal experience, to put it bluntly, that when it comes to issues that are sensitive to the power structure locally or nationally, that the media is not trustworthy. If we didn't figure that out during the Vietnam War, we either weren't alive then, or we have tuned out a reality that was not just present and obvious during the Vietnam War, it was crammed down our throats. And in the hardest and most brutal fashion possible. And recently, a book has been published which shows us just how the Gestapo tactics of J. Edgar Hoover were played at the time of the Vietnam War, and how there was actually a war being waged on dissent in this country even greater than today. It's bad enough today, but there were people that were being assassinated, and there are people being assassinated today, not just in foreign countries, but here in the United States. And they're being assassinated because not only do they practice dissent, but they do it very well. They're compelling. So if you make too much of a splash, you go on a list. I imagine that Crystal and I are on more than one. But yeah, well, I would be disappointed if I wasn't. And but there are people that are assassinated. We've had a number of them that I can point to. And a number of suspicious deaths that I would say that are suspicious. But we have a society that has opposed change to the point where necessary change has been overlooked and suppressed, oppressed, repressed, every way imaginable. And we've come to loggerheads with our future. And the people who are standing in our way have become desperate. And they have performed one outrageous, atrocious false flag operation after another. And, there are people that want to argue with you about this, but in each and every case I've found either they were very suspicious in their actions or they were just totally ignorant. But I don't think anybody today that cares about the future of their children or of children, period, would argue with me that we are at a point in history where things have to change for the better or we won't be around much longer.
Yes, that's very true. And as far as going after dissenters, I think this is another way that the split consciousness becomes what we refer to as cognitive dissonance so many times, because this is the peer pressure. You're not supposed to stand out. If you don't say what everybody else says, like Kevin Blanche, they'll be calling you a radical. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. If you're not going to go with the flow, there's something wrong with you. And the problem is, and why I believe that this exploits split consciousness so terribly, is that the subconscious mind always wants to tell the truth and knows what it is. And when you live in a world where everything is socially engineered to keep you from recognizing it or punishing you if you do, well, that says a lot.
Yes, it drives that gap between the conscious mind and the subconscious further and further apart. When you take a child, 4 or 5 years old, and a mother, the paper boy comes to collect and the mother doesn't want to deal with it, she'll tell Joey, tell him I'm not here. Or the little boy, notices a sword on his Aunt Matilda's nose or chin, and Mama says, well, whatever you do, don't stare at that, and definitely don't ask how you got it, if she got it, or any of this. Well, this is teaching that child to dissemble. This is not healthy, and we make part of the socializing process one of wearing a mask, kind of like a Molière play, where people wear a mask and they become more of the mask than they do themselves. And this is what we have. Fashion is one of the destroyers of personality. And we see that more and more. You take a person that has materialist values and focuses so much on fashion to the neglect of learning passages from plays, learning reading literature, keeping up with science and so forth. And they trade on their looks, they trade on fashion, they trade on what they own, what they drive. And we have a nation of people who are relegated to that because the public education system goes right along with actually denying the value of anything other than that. Today, it was a lot like that when I was a boy, but it's more so today. And instead, kids are siphoned off into the realm of video games and music that has no social redeeming value. It's not like the music of the 60s that had social import. And today, there's almost an absence of that. Some comedians are socially attuned, concerned. Some actors and actresses. But for the most part, these are considered freaks in a way. Kind of like eccentrics are looked upon in the United States and looked on a hell of a lot more objectively in England and in countries in Europe. The United States has lent itself to anti-intellectualism as a part of the self-image of, well, I am what I need to be to keep the money rolling in, and that's what's important, and I'll play golf and watch football and baseball, and that's their life. That becomes a person's life who has adopted materialist values to the exclusion of anything finer.
And I personally really believe that social engineering, we did a show on social engineering, and like I said earlier, you can go to either one of our websites and type in social engineering and you'll find it. You can also go to YouTube and type in our name and social engineering and you'll find it. And I think that social engineering is the elitist way of making sure we keep each other in line so that they don't have to do it. And because you won't be accepted, because they're telling you what's cool and they're telling you what looks good and they're telling you what your value as a human being is, and you don't have any unless you're making lots of money. So they've set this entire system up. And to go back to what you were saying earlier, I remember when my son was about 3. He's a sophomore in high school now, so this was a long time ago. When he was 3, he came to me and my husband and he said, "I wonder who broke the VCR." So we knew right away who did it. And it was just really cute because I really believe that this split consciousness is preventing people from having a conscience. Subconsciously, because the subconscious mind always wants to tell the truth. He was only 3 years old and he felt compelled to tell us the truth. He was a little creative about how he did it, but he did it. But we live in a world where people are taught, don't admit something like that. And so it just drives the conscious mind farther and farther away from the subconscious mind in all of this social engineering. And I think that peer pressure is the worst, because the truth doesn't matter if the world is going to reject you for it. So I think a lot of people who make headway aren't afraid to be alone, because the right thing matters more. The right thing matters more than being accepted by a club, especially when you can see that the club is ready to, run off a cliff. And we've all heard that saying when we were kids, right? Well, if everybody else ran off a cliff, would you do it too? We say, oh no, that's silly, but the reality is that that's exactly what's happening.
Well, we see this carried on within the world of cult thinking, where they to avoid morality, to avoid the self-expectation of accountability, and to acknowledge the need in order to contribute, to have knowledge and to have data to support that knowledge. We have people that talk about different realities. There's one reality. There's one truth. And if you don't have that in common with the other people you're dealing with, you have nothing. Nothing. Then we have people that'll say, well, there's evil and good, and they balance each other out. You can't have one without. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. This avoids personal accountability. You have people today that are trying to tell people misinformation, not because they have any reason to other than to just be contrary. They've heard this maybe from a disinformant, and somebody says,
James, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but James, you're cutting out really bad. Are you, is it your headphones maybe, or?
No, I don't think so. I don't know any reason why I should be.
That's a little bit better, so. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Am I cutting out,
okay,
Dave?
Go ahead.
No, you're not cutting out here.
All right. But personal accountability is very important. It is the tool that we use for self-examination, introspection, the things that allow us to grow and be better than we were from one day to the next. And without that, it's just like society. Society needs that collectively. We need that individually. We need to be able to look at the people that are running our lives and view them with the power of our own expectation of what they should uphold, what they should honor, what they should live up to. And not enough of that is being done because we're not doing it to ourselves. I don't see the healthy outrage when I look at the treasonous emergency acts and executive orders that are being shoved down our throats every day more and more. The misspent funds that are going here and there but are not being used to help people in our own society even survive. The lowering of our standard of living, the sellout of our jobs and industry, the higher and higher debit that we're placing on our children in terms of disproportionate production with our buying at home and abroad. We are watching everything that we ever worked for, everything that this country was founded on, going to the dump. And we're sitting back and we're not doing anything about it. We're not speaking out. And the people that do are offending those that don't. And, right now we're being poisoned. We're being poisoned from several different directions. And we're having Mother Nature fooled with by people that are operating with our money. We have a private army being constructed by a White House that fears its own people because it has a reason to. It is treasonous. So what do we have? Right now we have chaos and havoc and don't know it. We have a lawlessness that's perpetrated by our very own courts. We don't have constitutional scholars in the Supreme Court. We have people that have their own personal agenda and are confirmed when it's shown to the committee that confirms them. So we're getting what we're allowing. Government is like a child. It'll be only as good as you make it be. And it'll be as bad as you allow it to be.
And this is what we're trying to cut through, I think, James, is getting people to understand their personal responsibility in what's happening. And when cognitive dissonance is exploited, it's so hard to do that. Because there's what the individual on one level knows is the right thing to do. But society, which has been set up by the social engineers and the elite, is constantly reminding them that they're going to be punished if they have a view that's different from the one that they're espousing. And so you have a lot of people in fear, and I think this I think that in a sense, like you were talking about the masks, and this is very true, even our own lives, we wear masks, we take one off and we put another one on. And I think that in a sense, the exploitation of the split consciousness is creating almost a split personality in people, which I mentioned earlier. You'll have people that say, oh yeah, hey, we can all just, sit around and meditate and everything will be fine. But in reality, that's not what they would do. But they aren't really going to make that connection until they have to deal with reality. And even then, if it's just a moment and the entirety of society is saying, well, look, you can't have a view that's different. I mean, you look at all these people, these whistleblowers who have come out and said this is happening and that's happening. And if we can't all learn what they know and take it seriously, it's that age-old saying, we're either going to fight together or hang separately. And that's what's happening, and that's what happened with the suicides you referred to. Breitbart was murdered, Schwartz was murdered, the woman who authorized Barack Obama's Hawaiian birth certificate was recently murdered. There was another fellow who was murdered. It was the car crash that some people thought was a drone, and I can never remember his name. Do you remember who I'm talking about? He had a Mercedes that he supposedly ran into a pole, and he was terrified that he was he was going to be killed. Do you remember who I'm talking?
Investigative journalist. Yes, I just don't recall his name. I'm very poor on names.
I don't either.
But
yeah, I am too. It's one of quirks.
We have people awakening. We have people awakening that are tuning into a more objective self-perception every day, that are coming up, and at the same time we have the social engineers and the people behind them becoming increasingly more desperate. We have recently had a very traumatic false flag that would have been decimating and killed millions of people. It almost happened and very brave men stopped it at the risk of their careers, perhaps even their lives. And, people have a hard time believing that. Now we have disinformation coming out trying to taint the disclosures that relate to the documents that Snowden took out when he left the NSA. I've always said that when he comes out, he will have some disinformation stuck to his shoes, because you grab what you can. You know that all of it will have some meaning, but you have to put it in the light of truth, because disinformation is inherent in everything the government does at all levels of its agencies. They told CIA agents during the JFK assassination and subsequently afterwards a bunch of BS to make them feel good about hiding the truth from the American people that would have led to a fuller investigation. The same thing was done with the FBI, because there are agents that are trying to do their job as holden to their vow to support and back the Constitution. There are people that are, and even in Homeland Security, I would imagine, it's hard to, but that are sincere. In FEMA, and that's even harder to believe. But there are. And to these people, I know that they're having a very hard time struggling, trying to do the right thing and trying to find a way to do the right thing and survive. But we live in a period where if things don't change, we won't have much to look forward to in the near future.
That's right. If people don't do what they know they should do, they won't survive it. They won't survive it. And that's really important. And all the way through all of this, always, we have to remember that the misuse of technology is behind the self-destruction episodes that we've experienced so many times before. That's the real kicker. Now, you and I have talked many, many times about the patterns. You know, if you can teach people the patterns, the details don't matter quite so much. And as an example, you know, that old saying, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it looks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And patterns are how we learn things. This is how we learned what the letter A is. People who write books and use Arial font that's a sans serif font, it's much, much harder for people to read because that serif are the little lines that make the pattern more obvious. It's what you're used to. So I think that, you know, what we're going to talk about tonight is going to be heavy for a lot of people. It's going to be a breath of fresh air for other people. But either way, it's the truth, and it's something that people need to know. We're kind of inching our way towards it because it's a really big deal, and we want to make sure that we do it justice. But as far as patterns go, given where we want to go with this conversation, I think one of the most important that we can point out now is, again, the name of the show is NWO Race with Time, and it is a race against time. In terms of, are we going to do the right thing before they do a sin? And the New World Order is the they that we're talking about. So in terms of patterns, and some of the most important that we could possibly convey at the moment, I think that the report from Iron Mountain is spectacular in terms of what they've said they're going to do. And if we look at that and then take a look at our reality, they're doing what they said they're going to do. Now, I have never, obviously there's a big age difference between the two of us, which I really appreciate because you've been around a lot longer than I have. And I appreciate your wisdom in that regard. I never got the chance to read the report from Iron Mountain, the original report that first came out. I've tried to look for YouTube videos. I think the most popular one that's out there has so much Christian end times dogma in it that I don't even know that it is helpful anymore. So if you wouldn't mind, James, I would like for you to explain, because you're very familiar with this report. You met some people, in your own life who were involved with this. I would like for you to explain what's in it. And especially, and I encourage everybody to remember in everything we say, the misuse of technology is what causes our demise. So I would like for people to keep that in mind and maybe even make a little checklist as we go through what was in that report, because it's unfolding before our eyes.
Well, I think
so if you wouldn't mind, can you tell us?
Let me give a little background first. Report from Iron Mountain. It's about 120 pages. It was commissioned by JFK as a think tank study to try to determine how world peace might affect the institutions, not just the military, but the industrial military complex. What would be if there were to be a transition, what it would entail. And how to maintain a stable society in its face, since the World War II had set a trend of heavy industrialization in favor of the military-industrial complex, and that is an industry that has a higher profit margin than almost any other, except maybe the pharmaceutical industry. So this was commissioned by JFK, and he died before it was finished, and after he died it became something other than a study to determine the social impact of worldwide peace. It became a blueprint for implementing the New World Order. Because the very think tanks that were involved in it, Rand, Westinghouse, and CFR, were all wrapped up in New World Order thinking. and they had their own agendas, and they came together at one point, just about the time that JFK was assassinated. But the reason that I can speak with certainty about its legitimacy, since this was a very compelling revelation to most people, it had to be debunked. So there were all kinds of attempts, and which even continued here in the last 15 years. Where I know it's valid is that when I was going to Michigan State University, the biggest CIA school in the country, we were on the quarter system, and every time we went to register for classes, there was always a table set up for CIA recruiting. So, I can give you other examples of just how much a CIA school it was. The poli-sci department at Michigan State had installed the Diem regime in its secret police. It had been funded through the Michigan State University. And I didn't know that until it was revealed to me by William Hinton, who came to Michigan State for a lecture, was solicited for a lecture by the poli-sci, the chairman of the Department of Political Science there. And when he got there, he discovered that this guy had been a big wig in setting up the Diem regime, and he declined because he wasn't that fond of the CIA. And he rented a student, or he talked people into getting the student auditorium and gave his own lecture, which I attended, and became a fan of William Hinton, who was the leading expert on Chinese village life and had written the book Fanchon, which is classic work. But be that as it may, I attended, after some experiences like that, I started auditing graduate level poli-sci courses there out of curiosity more than anything else. And several, they taught a report from Iron Mountain, and it was on sale in the bookstores in a little pamphlet, softback pamphlet. So I know it was genuine. And later on, after the last attempt to debunk it by this twit that says he wrote it as a satire, never wrote anything else worth a flip, worth reading, Arthur Schlesinger came forward about it and said, yeah, it was genuine. He knew it for a fact. But what the report is a blueprint for projecting the problem and solution in each step towards moving towards the global government. And in it has the designed what they called at the time greenhouse effect, what we call global warming today, and how that would be used to give greater and greater control through regulation of the government bureaucrats, of course, who are implementing the New World Order takeover, over people and businesses. And how to see, anytime you increase regulations over businesses, you are making it harder and harder for small business to survive. And that's the idea. The idea among bureaucrats and politicians is to get that campaign money. And the people that can give you the most campaign money are big business, and they want to eat up small business. So that's in keeping with what we see now, a subject that Crystal did a wonderful job on, Trans-Pacific Partnership. Well, that's what it's all about. We're looking at corporate fascism. We're looking at the tools that corporate fascism has been using since the late 50s to absolutely deindustrialize the industrial nations, take them over, reduce most of the citizens to debt slavery, bring in a welfare state, and then start depopulation. Well, the report goes on to mention the 3 steps in implementing the New World Order. One of them, in the original version, consists of the hostile ET thesis. And, of course, it's not as refined as it has become in the last 20 years. But it was envisioned at the time. And you have the Iron Mountain idea is that they would have these underground cities or underground bunkers for the rich so that they could be protected no matter what went on that wasn't protected. What happened to the rest of the population? Depopulation was spoken of very, very cautiously in the report from Iron Mountain. It was broached a lot more firmly in the periodicals of the CFR, which was Foreign Affairs, at that time. And if you can get any of those old back issues, there were always 2 or 3 writers who had an article in it which was eugenic and concerned with manipulating people in rather bizarre ways and depopulation. But again, who was going to read CFR in those days? Certainly wasn't something even that editors of newspapers and people that were writing articles in the magazines, the leading magazines of the day would read. I can remember reading many, many articles in the New York Times, in the Nation magazine, and in some of the alternative anti-war magazines of the day, which were all put out of business, like Ramparts, like Minority of One, like Liberation, and never any mention of what was going on with the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations. But they were, in ways, they weren't so guarded because they didn't think anybody's looking over their shoulders. Oh, well, we're a think tank. We serve the government. We serve big business. And
we're the smart
things
people.
Done. That's right.
Yeah, we're the smart
they
people
were the
that have all the answers.
They were the saviors. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they were
unfortunately,
insidious.
they sold us down the river.
But what Iron Mountain were these complexes that they were going to build, and they completed 3 or 4 of them. One of them close to where I live, and some of them have 30, 35, 40 levels, and they're today those that are in use are generally used for black ops laboratories, and the one at Dulce is used in conjunction between covert black ops and the CB connection that is going on there. But these are all installations built with billions and billions of dollars, that they're built with money for purposes against your interest.
But what we're ultimately leading up to is the phony, baloney, hostile ET agenda and how people need to get out of it. That's really what we're leading up to, and it's just really important. Okay, so I spilled the beans. We've not shared with anyone what we were going to talk about tonight for obvious reasons, but it's really time to talk about it, and I can't speak for James, but I personally have been waiting to do this for a very long time. We tried, actually, earlier this year with another host on another show. We dropped some hints. The show went great. Some of the callers were great, but the next time we had an interlude with that particular host, things went south really fast. So now that we have our own show, we don't have to worry about that, and we can get right to the point. So going back to what you know about the report from Iron Mountain, do you remember, James, the succession of how their plan was going to unfold? I think it started first with communism.
Yes.
Those were the evil bad guys, and we all had to band together and develop weapons. Always remember this. Remember this, listeners, in everything we say. The misuse of technology causes our demise. So what you have in the report from Iron Mountain is a buildup of weapons technology to meet the threats that they're saying are real, when in fact that technology is meant to be used against us. That's what it's for, and that's the way it has always been. So what came after communism, James? Do you remember? Was it terrorism?
Detente.
Could you elaborate, please?
There would be two superpowers. They would maintain their economy with military-industrial spending. That gives military-industrial spending puts so much power in the hands of so few through economic potlatch. You're building something that you damn well hope will never be used, so that's potlatch. And at the same time, it keeps so many of the agencies of the government busy. It justifies espionage. It justifies secret keeping. It justifies having an increase in the information gathering capacity of corporations and government agencies alike, so that the line becomes blurred between privacy and national security. I mean, what we're seeing today is the finishing touches. We're seeing the apex of the pyramid that came about during this period of the Cold War. And of course, the Cold War was manufactured. DuPont was manufactured. This all kept alive military defense establishment that grew in power to the point where it could interfere with government and interfere with the people that ran the government. And how much of this interference led to war in Korea, the war in Vietnam, and the wars in the Middle East. You don't need very many key people in the military to play along.
We don't. Ultimately, though, again, listeners, remember, keep this in the back of your mind while James was explaining misuse of technology. So you have this report that was supposed to go one direction. It goes another direction. And pretty soon what you have is a phony justification for ever more aberrant technology. That's super important. So what came after terrorism in the report?
Well, terrorism was not really refined at that point. This report was leaked in around 1966. So terrorism was a card that still hadn't been played. So people wouldn't really appreciate the social criminal aspect of these machinations as they might. Basically, it was Machiavellian, with the twist that, had accommodated the instruments of government encroachment with the military and with these, secret projects and with, the use of atomic weapons and the threat that hung over everybody's head of hydrogen bombs. So, the government had become a terrorist. that's when people started building these bomb shelters, and idiots were telling kids how to duck under their desks and everything. This was terrorism. This was social terrorism.
Yes, duck and cover. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sought to justify greater and greater spending and, more and more historical rewriting to make Stalin worse than he was, to make, to convince everyone to look the other way at what Israel was doing in the Middle East. We should give them a lot of room. We should forgive them so much because of what they went through in the Holocaust. And, one thing after another, one plug after another, for their allies in dominating the way people thought, the way people conducted their lives, how much money they made or didn't make. This was the period in which ad agencies were beginning to get involved in politics, and we were beginning to see the offshoot of this mechanism that has been referred to as the tail wagging a dog. And it all came about because of the way people were terrorized into, the government manufactured consent through manufactured terror.
Yeah, basically.
And of course, the real culprits in the Cold War were never caught. They were never given their justice. One fellow that spied for Israel against the United States and was an American citizen did more damage to national security in the United States than all the other spies, Soviet and otherwise, combined. And what's interesting, how these ghosts keep cropping up. There's a recent series of articles on some of these documents that Greenwald has of Snowden's. And in one of them, there is this plea for that Greenwald makes when he spoke before Israeli Congress here recently, that, this individual that did this spying against the United States for Israel should be considered like Snowden. And if Snowden is to be given amnesty, this guy should be given amnesty. And they two are not compatible.
No, they aren't. That's a very interesting twist. I'm really sorry, James.
This is
I'm
how
still having
this
technical
information
issues on my end.
Well, this is the
I'm
way
not trying
that
to talk over you. I think there's a delay.
Can you hear me now?
You're cutting out for me very, very badly, like somebody trying to use a cell phone in the forest. I'm doing my best. So if I'm talking over you, it's because of the delay that's happening. I don't mean to, but please continue.
Crystal, I understand. When Snowden came out with these documents, there was disinformation. It stuck to his shoes, and there are people that were all set to use this information to try to discredit him. But Snowden is a hero. And I don't have any fault with him whatsoever, no matter how he might look to some other people, where he took refuge to stay alive. And he made it clear to the American public that they have had their privacy stolen from them, ripped away from them in the most sordid and penetrating of ways. And to that, all of us owe him a debt of gratitude just for that. There's a lot more to come, however, and of course, from what I hear, Mr. Greenwald is trying to make hay with it for himself. But when he made these statements in support of Israel, it told me that he was being very selective in what he was choosing to reveal and how he was actually more interested in the disinformation than in the truth. Because His comparisons are fraudulent, and they're agenda-driven, and I'm very suspicious of him, and I would like to know who recommended Greenwald to Snowden. I'd be very suspicious of them. But one of the aspects of this is that Greenwald evidently is trying to support, by the way he's disclosing some of this disinformation, grounds for that would help install a hostile alien thesis that the New World Order has already declared that it would use as the final stage for implementing its global control. So I have various reasons for disliking the selective use of what Greenwald is disclosing and how he's disclosing it. Because I know from my own personal experience that there is no hostile ET threat. It would not be allowed, it is not allowed, and it does not exist.
James, again, I did try to find some information on the report from Iron Mountain, but it was just really contaminated with all kinds of filters that made it very difficult to get through, and I don't even know if they were quoting the original version. Did the report from Iron Mountain outline the steps that they would take the way Carol Rosin has explained those steps in terms of communism, terrorism, asteroids, environment, and phony ET agenda? Were those in the report?
Basically they were, but not in any order, not precise. I have the opinion that when Carol Rosin was told this by Wernher von Braun, that this was long after the report from Iron Mountain had been published. And I know that when LBJ saw it, he denounced it, didn't want to have anything to do with it. That's the only good thing I can say about him. But it had how to exact greater and greater control over business, how to create a social control over people. I didn't say anything about socialized medicine. I mean, Obama has kind of jumped ahead of the clown. Mm-hmm. But it did have the greenhouse effect. It did have the hostile alien thesis. It did have the building up the military-industrial complex, detente, and the programmed use of several of the mechanisms that of media and many of the courses that events have taken, like the deregulation of banks, the bailouts and so forth, which have all made things much, much worse for the common man, for the working class. All of these probably might have been discussed, but they wouldn't have been put in print at that time anyway. Because unions were still strong then.
So in your view, do you think that what von Braun shared with Carol Rosin was a refined version, the new and improved report from Iron Mountain?
Yeah.
And that he is an insider who had a conscience and a moral core of some type, just could not live with, or die without telling someone exactly what he knew they were up to?
I think so. That's my impression of him. So people have referred to him as a Nazi. He was a scientist, aeronautical genius. I don't think that he was a card-carrying Nazi, like Bormann or some of the others that he knew. But he did develop the V2 rocket, and he did have some interesting documents that he brought with him from Germany. But as far as being a monster, I think that he saw the way things were headed, and I think that probably he agreed with Oppenheimer about the hydrogen bomb. I don't know. In his position, it would have been far more devastating to him to have made the statements that Oppenheimer made than it was to Oppenheimer. And even then, Oppenheimer was vilified because he wouldn't work on the hydrogen bomb. And he was thought they used guilt by association. His brother had been a socialist in college, so they slammed him with that, which wasn't fair or just. But they would do anything. They'll do anything when they don't get their way. And of course, Oppenheimer probably made more contributions to the A-bomb than any single man involved.
But in the end, didn't he refuse, and they used his team anyway?
Yes. In fact, they put a spokesman in there, another Carl Sagan-like type that would say what they wanted to say, but who wasn't that good a physicist to begin with, Edward Teller. If you ever want to know about Edward Teller, just see Mulholland Drive, the movie. It's all about Teller.
So it sounds like von Braun, maybe having taken a lesson from Tesla, and Tesla was taught a lesson, and that lesson was meant for more people than him. For people who have the minds that they have, there's no way that they can actually, manifest the technology and the ideas without the funding. So I agree with you. I don't think that just because a scientist ends up working for so-and-so, that their views are in line with so-and-so.
No.
But they know that their mind, what's in their mind, cannot be manifest without the funding and the laboratory equipment that they need to do it. So I feel very much the same way. Now, he did, through Carol Rosin, explain the series of events that they were going to use. And he reminds me very much of the late Bill Cooper, who was murdered. And Bill Cooper said, whatever they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you believe it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're coming from...
Most people know that now. Most people know that Osama bin Laden was probably not even alive, much less had anything to do with 911.
That's right. That's exactly right. They know now after what they've seen. So...
But here's the thing, Crystal, here's the thing, what we were talking about, consciousness on this planet. In an objective mind, free from clutching at the comfort zone, free from the split consciousness, able to take one thing and run with it to the next step. That alone, seeing the inconsistencies, the lies, misrepresentations, all the fraudulent practices that came about and were demonstrated over and over again, in which people today, experts, have pointed out to abundantly over 911, and the facts that stick out, like Building 7, like the free fall rate, like all three buildings falling in their footsteps, the particulation of concrete, steel, and everything in the offices, and all of this. And people still can't leave placing confidence in the mass media, placing confidence in these politicos, and trust them to do the right thing. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's very bizarre, James. And in fact, in a show you did recently, I think it was with Mark of Ohio Exopolitics, you said something very interesting, something that people are not going to understand if they don't take social engineering, exploiting their own split consciousness into consideration. And you said that the word proof means nothing on this planet. And it doesn't for people who are succumbing to the split consciousness that ends up in cognitive dissonance, which is, chase your tail to nowhere, which is what they want. And so that's really important. But so now that we've, kind of inched our way towards the real meat of what we have to say, I just want to get right into it. So the hostile ET agenda pushers. Now, this is not only in line with the report from Iron Mountain, but also what Carol Rosin was told by von Braun, communists, terrorists, asteroids, aliens, okay? So we're here now. We're here. We can look back and see, oh yeah, he was telling the truth, because that's exactly what they've done. But what concerns me, what mystifies me and disgusts me at the same time, are all these people in the alternative media, right? The alternative, the good alternative, supposedly. Oh, the reptoids are doing this and that. Oh, the hostile. Look, that's utter bullshit. It's bullshit. And it's sickening to me because out of one side of their mouth, oh, yes, we know exactly what's going on in the New World Order, but out of the other side of the mouth, oh, well, the reptoids are responsible for everything, and this is blame shifting, and this is straight out of the manual of these elitist, narcissistic, psychopathic, depopulation nut jobs.
Yes.
It is. Yeah. Okay, so it's blame shifting, and I have explained this so many times. It's like a really bad cartoon, and we've seen these cartoons as kids. So you have you have these cartoon characters run into a bank with masks on, and they rob the bank and they run out and they take the masks on, and by this time the other people in the town have heard the bank got robbed, and everybody runs up to them and says, well, who did it? Which way did they go? And they point somewhere else, and everybody runs with their torches and pitchforks in the wrong direction, while these bastards left all the way to the bank with the money they stole. It's blame shifting. So, Al-Qaeda, there's no Al-Qaeda. A man from the CIA even said there's no Al-Qaeda. It's Al-CIA-da, right? So now they're shifting the blame. It's all to cover their own dirty faces and their own bloody hands. They just blame it on someone else. So, It's Al-Qaeda doing it. And now Al-Qaeda is being traded in for Space Qaeda. And this is how ridiculous it is to me. So I'm going to use a story from my from my high school years, and it's really this pathetic. I remember being in class when I was a senior in high school, and we had a substitute teacher, and there was this kid in front of me who was shooting staples at the substitute teacher at the back of her head when she was writing on the chalkboard. And when she realized what was going on, she turned around and she said, "Who's doing that?" And the person in front of me, and I swear to God, pointed at the kid next to him and said, "He did it, I saw him." And that kid got in trouble for it. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the people really behind all of it, making up stories about who's really doing it to you. And what I find so sickening about this is, the Project Camelots and the David Ickes, the reptoids, that's bullshit.
It is.
There are real people with real names and real addresses on a very real planet doing very real awful things to the rest of us. And we have to recognize that. We have to recognize that, whether by hook or by crook, these people are selling the rest of us and our future down the river for $1, for their 15 minutes of fame today. And that's disgusting. It's stupid, childish, selfish, disgusting, and really horrifying in the end, right? That we would have people, sell us out for $1. So there was
I used to wonder, and I had decided that all that it would take for the sleeping giant of people to wake up would be to go to 2 days without eating, knowing that there's no reason in this country of plenty, and we used to feed half the world from produce in the United States. We fed Russia even. That all of a sudden the breadbasket of the world can't produce enough food and put it on the store shelves to feed our own people. They'll know then that there's only one reason for this, and it's a man-made famine. They'll know that. And, they're a little bit out of the ballpark when it comes to the economy. They have no idea what a trade deficit is or a protective tariff. These are words and phrases that haven't been used in a generation, because this plan, this conspiracy to bring this country down has been going on 25 years. Full stop. Go to any city, go through industrial areas that used to flourish. Look where the jobs are. Watch the long lines at the unemployment offices. Just take a look. Wake up. God almighty, wake up.
And the health of the people and their animals and the environment, it's really a mess. Now, there is a fellow that I first came across years ago through Alex Jones, and his name is Alan Watt. W-A-T. Not, and I repeat, not Alan Watts. There's no S on the end. And earlier last year, now I really like this guy. He's got his act together and he knows the score. Last year, at the beginning of last year, I found a video of him on YouTube. It was like a 25-minute video, not long, just him talking to the camera, where he said that he knows for a fact that the alternative media has been bought. And he knows because he was offered the same deal. And the deal was, as long as you include the hostile ET thesis in your work, we will guarantee you book deals and lecture tours and money and fame. He said no. Now, I tried twice over the holiday the holiday period to get in touch with him, to get him on this show to tell this story. I was unsuccessful, but it doesn't matter, because you have someone who is on the inside saying, this is what's happening. And this blows my mind, because I don't get how people like that, how people like Kerry Cassidy, how people like David Icke, how all the others can't pay attention long enough to understand that we are standing on the edge of oblivion, but still think that, hey, I'm going to make an extra buck if I sell this bullshit, and do it. I don't get it. I just don't get it, because they don't get it, and I can't understand why they don't get it. We're at a point where you don't have time to worry about, oh, my next re-election, or who, my neighbors are going to think I'm so smart if I'm driving a Mercedes. Your planet is dying. Your animals are dying. Your food sources are dying. Your plants are dying. Everything is dying. And all you can think about is self-gratification. My 15, I'm so disgusted by it. I can't even stand it. It's disgusting. So, to make the point in a way that people can get, and so we won't have whiners out there saying, oh, well, this is just infighting in the alternative media. This is the fight of your lives. If you don't get that, I can't help you. James can't help you. And in turn, you're not going to help us. You're not going to grab a bucket and help bail. You're not going to save your own race from extinction because you want a Mercedes. Okay. Got it. Aside from Alan Watts,
in the latest,
and what? Go ahead.
In the latest development about this hostile ET thesis, they're trying to make a case for tall white or Aryan or blondes or whatever they want to call them. They call them different things. They are known as blondes. Them working with the powers that be to bring about all these horrible things, and that's a lie. That is absolute lie. This is the blondes' home. They would have nothing to do with the trends that are leading to these nuclear reactors they despise. They would have nothing to do with the famine, the disease, all the everything, the Fukushima, the Gulf of Mexico disaster. These are all things that concern them greatly. And they would have nothing to do with making this earth into what it is becoming. Nothing. And they would not work with the monsters.
That's right. And you know what?
Period.
Yeah. And that's really important because, as you've said, and as I've tried to explain myself, the misuse of our technology is what destroys us. And people just can't get that there's no savior that's going to march in here on a white horse and save us all when we don't care enough to save ourselves. And I don't blame them because I wouldn't do it either. So I get it. I totally get it.
My dear, I love your passion.
So let's talk, I love your passion. Well, let's see if we can provide some solid evidence, beyond what we've said in terms of how and why people are being snowed with this hostile ET agenda, and how if they understood natural law, they would know better. This is the thing. People are participating in their own demise out of ignorance, and this is by design. If people understood creational design and natural law, they couldn't be snowed. They would know better. And that's why people don't know. That's how that whole thing works. So let's talk about the moon. The false choice, the false choice, the false choice. So before I get into that, I'm going to tell you a story about this wonderful little cartoon I saw on Facebook recently. It was 3 glasses, just a little comic strip. It was 3 glasses, all filled halfway full with a yellow liquid. And there were little faces and little arms drawn on each of these glasses, so they were kind of alive and talking. And the first one says, "My cup is half empty." And the second one says, "Well, my cup is half full." And the third one says, "Guys, I think this is urine." Okay, so that's what we have going on with the moon landing. I really love that. It's just so telling. Okay, so everybody's arguing. Did we go to the moon? Did we not go to the moon? That's the false choice dichotomy they have people trapped in. That's not the real question. The question is, how did we get to the moon? We know enough about the moon that we've clearly been there. There have been numerous scientists who have come out against the establishment bullshit and said, we know you can't get to the moon in a rocket, and this is why. So the real question isn't did we go or didn't we, it's how we got there. And I knew that before I met you. And that was another thing that I was so impressed with because you very specifically explained how we got there. EB craft. And this is the one thing that they don't want you to know. This is like a huge, huge thing that James and I are explaining to you today. The abductions on this planet were done by black ops, not ETs. So would you mind giving people who are not familiar with you or any of the other shows we've done a refresher course on the difference between an EB and an ET?
The Air Force knew as early as 1972 that there were distinct differences between ETs and EBs. An ET is an extraterrestrial sentient being. An EB is an extra biological entity. In other words, created, put together. They're chunks of meat sewn together with a computer terminal. That's why they don't make any attempt to recover each other whenever they crash, or that's why they are self-expendable. They are here by virtue of the fact that this is the last place they can go. ET knows they're problematical. They're not hostile, but they're problematical. They interfere with the growth and development of cultures, so they're getting rid of them. And this is their last refuge right here on Earth. And they have made a kind of pact with covert black ops. And the only way that people can get out past the Van Allen belt, or even into, if they did get out beyond that and continue, they could be protected from the cosmic bombardment that would kill them, is an EB craft, because the EB craft have a metal that can be ionized and create an environment on the inside that will be artificial and protect them from the movements and maneuvers of the craft itself, and on the outside protect them from cosmic bombardment and radiation. And they don't know how to make this metal on Earth, and that's good. That's fine. That because they would weaponize, they would even go further with their contagion, and so ET's not going to help them there. ET's not going to give them anything they can weaponize further. ET has run them off of the moon and run them off Mars because they were weaponizing bases there. And Dr. Berggren had proof of how they were run off.
That's right, he did. And I want to re-emphasize what I said a moment ago about Alan Watt and his admission that he had been offered the deal, a deal he didn't take. So what's really so sad about Norman Berggren and his life's work is that he took it to the UFO community, and that community has taken the deal. They've all taken the deal. Any big name you've ever heard of has taken the deal. That's why they're big names. People just don't get that. So he went to the UFO community with what you and I know to be a new and improved view of creational design. And how did they treat him? What did they do to him? Do you want to tell that story?
When he tried to approach, when he tried to approach Richard Hoagland, or have his associate Casey Dawkins approach Hoagland at these UFO fairs or get-togethers, they shunned him. When he published his book, none of his colleagues criticized him, but the ufologists couldn't try harder to debunk him. That's all they did. Most of them, I never ran into any that I actually believe read his book. But most ufologists live for the day that they can produce a smoking gun that doesn't exist, because one phenomenon is not going to explain the whole of the UFO phenomena. These are people that are coming from all over this part of the galaxy in different kinds of craft for different reasons, but they're all peaceful. They're all well-wishers because they have the technology to end any conflict that might be created with Earth in a microsecond. That's what Star Drive is. It's what it has the capability of, and to think that they would make war with us. They have all these other communities, all these other cultures looking over their shoulder, and they all honor this idea of waiting to see the experiment through. And they're all intrigued by the idea of this unique split consciousness to see if it can be civilized. They look at the universe as a living thing, most of them.
And it is a living thing, as are the living things that live within it. That's where they get their life from. So you and I can still go look at the pictures. They're pumping them out. on these SOHO satellites constantly of EMVs in the sun. But, so that tells you what the UFO community is really all about. It's bullshit. It's self-aggrandizing crap that is not going to get us where we need to go. And where we need to go is to prevent the seventh and final extinction episode. And all they think about is, well, look, I'm a guest speaker at a UFO conference. I'm going to sell a lot of books. I'm going to drive a nicer car. You're not going to have a planet.
Oh,
they don't get it.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. We have had people, whistleblowers, come forth that the people that jumped on them weren't scientists. They weren't even journalists. They were ufologists. And the spokesman for ufology is Stanton Friedman. Anytime on the mass media anything comes up about UFOs, it's Stan Friedman versus a debunker, invariably. And of course, Stan Friedman enjoys telling everyone he's never seen a UFO. He's a physicist and all. This tells me he has no business talking about them as a representative of the UFO community. If he's so lazy he can't get off his butt and go to one of these UFO flaps and see one. And I don't like the fact that, when Bob Lazar came out as a whistleblower, he was unilaterally attacked by Stanton Friedman.
So Stanton Friedman took the deal. So when you say he comes up against debunkers, Look, this is the same kind of dog and pony bullshit that they pulled in the Gulf of Mexico. Oh, look, everything's fine. Obama swam in the water. It was photoshopped. I mean, look, people need to get their heads out of their asses because we aren't going to survive if they don't. And I have no mercy,
I love it when you talk dirty.
Regard for any of these idiots. Look, I'm trying to raise a child in the middle of this shitstorm of stupidity and arrogance and ignorance, and I can't look at him with a straight face and tell him I know for sure he's going to have a future, and I know exactly why. And I don't like it. And don't think negative. You'll disturb my peace. Look, if you're not disturbed, you're not paying attention. Not even a little bit. You should be disturbed.
Amen.
These people want you dead. Yeah. These people want you dead. Now, Niara Isley is someone that we have talked about privately because people do not recognize how important her testimony is because she was taken to the moon in an EB craft. Now, before we get into that, I want to go back to what you were saying about the astronauts and how we don't have the metal and why we can't do what they said that we've done. And I wrote about this years ago in my first book. They were damaged by the radiation. They had cataracts.
That's right.
And there was a laboratory.
Yeah.
There was a laboratory that simulated a test of cosmic bombardment on cells, on human cells, and they were brain cells, and the cosmic radiation cut through the cells like a bullet and destroyed the tissue. We do not have the metal that we need to go where we need to go and do it safely, and what I appreciate so much about what you've shared, because it makes so much sense if people get what's really going on, that is a built-in safety mechanism so that we can't take our psychopathy out into the universe, into a universe of people from elsewhere who have already overcome it, who are there because they were willing to. If we want to join them, we have to do the same thing. We have to. We have to civilize our technology. And, these idiots that say, they're terraforming the earth. They don't get it. The technology that these people have, look, they don't need to terraform your planet to take it from you. They'll just come and take it from you. We don't have the technology that we would need to fight these people, which it makes it a really good thing that they're not trying to fight us. We wouldn't win. They don't want what we have. What they want is for us to survive. What I want is for the rest of us to want to survive. And that says a lot, doesn't it? How effective has social engineering been that the regular human being will override their own survival mechanism in favor of New Age bullshit?
Well, the people that are making the decisions are the ones that have had access to these Hall of Records that are left over from prior lineages that warn us about what went wrong in the hopes that we'll have the wisdom, this next lineage, to overcome it. And yet, I'm afraid you're right when you suppose that they just, the monsters take it and run with it as a blueprint for the next lineage. Is self-destruction edifying to anyone except madmen?
It doesn't make a lot of sense any other way.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, and they won't survive.
I have a little image that I point to. Imagine someone that paints themselves into a corner in the kitchen, and they're looking around and they don't want to mess up all that paint that they have to walk on. So what do? Oh yeah, we come up with an idea. They're next to the stove, so they turn all the burners on the gas stove up full, wait until it fills the room with gas, and then light it. That's exactly what's going on here, folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's really disgusting. I'm so disgusted with the sellouts. So I want to be really clear about what we mean when we say this. You have people who are very, very well-known personalities in the alternative media. They're being funded by sources unknown while they're claiming it's just our listeners funding us. Look, their listeners don't have enough money to get television networks started. Their listeners don't have enough money to send them all around the world. People don't have that kind of money. They're being funded by someone else, which is why I really wanted to get Alan Watt on the show, because he knows the deal. And he even said in that video, they all know who each other are. They all know they've taken the same deal. It's like a club. This club is going to, this is what's so sad. And I'm trying to be nice about it, which even though it really goes against my better judgment, because they're dangerous. Their ignorance and their greed for their 15 minutes of fame is a danger to the rest of us. It really is, because it's complete crap. And so I want to get more into how we know for sure it's complete crap. So let's talk about the Anunnaki garbage that's going around. Oh, they're the fallen angels from the Bible and they created man. Look, if you go through the Bible yourself, you'll find that it says, and I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying that even this is contrary to what they're spewing out, that people from elsewhere came here and mated with humans. So the humans were already here. Who created the humans? Well, we just skip all that and go, the Anunnaki did it. Okay, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And the gold, they want your gold. The only people on this planet that want your gold already have it and don't want you to have it. And this bullshit about, they need gold to fix our atmosphere. You and I have tried, I think, relentlessly over the last year to make sure that people know through the science of creational design or natural law or whatever you want to call it, that an atmosphere is created by living microbes, not gold. You cannot fix an atmosphere with gold. That's stupid. You can't do it. And if people understood creational design, they would know that. This is what's frying our plants. The chemtrails are putting holes in the magnetosphere. Why? They're killing the microbes that are that filter out the harmful radiation. This is why the sun looks white. And you get these other idiots out there. I don't know if they've taken the same deal. Oh, the sun is changing. Oh, the entire solar system is heating up. No, it's not. We have renegade science on this planet. The misuse of technology is going to kill us again and again and again. It always happens the same way. They don't need gold to fix an atmosphere. You and I couldn't fix our atmosphere with gold. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't work like that. And this is why people that are flying at very high altitudes are getting sick, because they're exposed to very high levels of radiation the same way astronauts would be if we really sent them back and forth in tin cans. It doesn't work like that. So let's talk about abductions, because a lot of people have been abducted, and We know it. We know it to be true.
Yes, and I want to say first off that the abduction phenomenon is real, that there are a number of men and women that have been abducted, have had horrible experiences, in a lot of cases have sublimated them in trying to make them to be able to live with their reoccurrence. What I would say about abduction experiments is that there is nothing about them that can't be simulated by black ops. And when you understand that, let's take, for instance, lost time phenomena. It was discovered back during the uranium rush days that when workers would go out on the grounds of the uranium mills where they were turning the uranium cake in the sun with paddles, that these workers would have loss of time. And it was dramatic. So they knew that radon gas caused this loss of time phenomena. So knowing that, they could pinpoint what part of the brain was associated with this loss of time. And they could figure out some other way, some other means. And there were two ways. One was radiation and one was a light at a certain spectrum hitting the eye. It would cause this loss of time. Now, the interesting thing about loss of time, it's kind of like an eraser on a chalkboard. You erase what's on the chalkboard and put what you want on the chalkboard in its place. Well, they can do that. They can erase the mind, short-term memory loss. And then, in surgical short-term memory loss, by that I mean exact. Then they can implant a scenario. But get this, it's not limited to that. They can do this off of a power grid, off of a power transformer station. They can do this off of power towers. It's something that they've had the ability to do for 30 years. So the recent abductions in the last 30 years have almost virtually all been black ops, sometimes with the aid of EB craft and EBs. But it's not done for EB purpose.
Explain, James, why
because they're experimenting with eugenics.
Yes. Explain, though, James, if you wouldn't mind, why the EBs must be present when black ops are using their craft. Well,
EB craft, the EBs are not engineers or scientists. They are explorers. They were made by a very elegant culture to go into deep space and to send back the information that they would find. And that's all they're good for, except they can pilot their craft and they can maintain it. And that's what they basically do. But in order for an EB is a computerized Android type. And the console that controls the craft does so through the computer network that is associated between the craft and the EB. And what pertains basically to a set of protocols that can't be duplicated on Earth. So the craft, just like Niara Isley says, the craft was piloted by an EB. It had to be. I'm sure that people that have watched some of these abduction shows where a person discusses what they saw aboard the craft and has talked to witnesses that have seen some of the material that is recovered from the crashes. And the ET craft don't crash. Or if they do crash, it would be very rare, and ET's going to recover everything they want, including other ETs. But the EB's not so, because they're expendable to each other. And if you've seen
and
any
just
of
let me
these,
interject here
the
really quick,
panel-
James. Let me interject really quick here. I'm sorry, we still have the delay going on, and it's frustrating, but how many movies do we watch where it's the machines against humanity? And you hear the humans say, the difference between them and us is we recover and bury our dead. And there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah. Well, we should, by nature, have reverence for our dead, because it is a way of passing. It is we're acknowledging that they are passing somewhere else. It is a ceremony of acknowledging that, and of acknowledging what their importance was before. It's a divine respect. Of course, these critters don't have that, and that is the most notable characteristic these abductees pick up on, is the disassociation of these creatures with anything that have a personality or have any sentience at all. Sentience has personality, believe me. And
Yeah.
the EBs interface with their craft the same way that one of your kids might interface with a video game. Only their interface is where they put their hand in the panel, and they are guiding that craft with what's inside them. They're a computer terminal, and there is a collective somewhere. Although
to distill what you said,
that's their secret. That's the only reason.
So to distill what you've said, the reason an EB is present on an EB craft is because they're the only ones who can fly it. So that's the connection between Black Ops
That's right.
and EBs. Black Ops, EBs
That's
cannot tell them how to create the technology. EBs cannot show them how to pilot the technology. They weren't designed for that, which I think is brilliant by those who created them, which we can go over again if you would like to, even though we've done it before. But the fact of the matter is that abductions are Black Ops. It's Black Ops doing this. That's who's doing it. And this, so when we look back on, such and such president was visited by EBs. Well, actually they say ETs, but really we could say EBs. And they agreed to protect EBs in exchange for our DNA. Well, that's pretty much bullshit. And people have to go back to what happened with the Nazis. The Nazis were obsessed with eugenics and genetics. Absolutely obsessed. And we know through Project Paperclip that they were brought here. So when the EBs came and they wanted access to that stuff, the EBs became another tool in their toolbox to do their dastardly deeds. What's interesting about this, though, and I know that people will bring it up, and the intelligent people will bring it up, and they should bring it up. A lot of people have said, well, abductions stopped some time ago. That's right, they did, but I ask of you, remembering that this is all about eugenics and genetic manipulation, how far was it between when the abductions stopped and when in vitro fertilization in clinics began?
It's a good point. Yeah, in direct relationship. They have a smart technology which they intend to use during depopulation, so that they can pick and choose segments of the population that is immune to the means of depopulation. And it's based on what they've discovered and what they've learned by experiments that have been conducted on men and women in the abduction phenomena.
There was even an episode Well, actually, I think more than one episode in the X-Files about this.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Yeah. Genetic engineering doesn't have to be done with E.B. Kraft. If you have women who are infertile because of their environment rushing in to give away their eggs, and their partners are rushing in to give away their sperm just so they can have a baby, it's all right there. They don't need E.B. Kraft to do that anymore.
If you'll notice, there's been one case after another about how these places that do the in vitro fertilization are run, how they mix up the eggs and they mix up the sperm and they do all sorts of weird things, because the purpose of those places, they're opportunized by the same people that are behind the black ops. They're carrying on these experiments on unwitting mothers that want babies so bad they'll resort to using these places, and yet these women are not getting what they're told they're getting. They may go in and say, yeah, I would like sperm from this type of person. They'll get what is running with the program at the time. And so they've had all kinds of problems, lawsuits and everything. But
yeah, you betcha.
The problem is, the people that are behind it have all this money, and of course they can print it. They're the same people that print money. So, they don't care about lawsuits or whatever.
No.
And if everyone's got a bottom line, how much is your life being screwed up worth? And everybody's bottom line is maybe a little different, but it'll always be around $2 million. And $2 million of these monsters of paper money doesn't matter.
That's right. Not to mention the really sickening lawsuits where the male owner of the clinic was using his own sperm for all of the women and didn't tell them.
And I'll guarantee you there's not a one of those people that are in the penitentiary today. Not a one of them.
No, God, no. Are you kidding? They're the bankers of eugenics. They're not going to jail for anything they do. But it's important that
they
we
may not
that
even
out.
have a medical background, and they're doing it because they enjoy it. This is fun and games.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to know how to puncture someone with a syringe and draw blood and place something on the ovum. I mean, big deal.
Yeah, so we've gone over a little bit. Dave is being very gracious. He hasn't asked us to wrap it up, so I want to keep going because I'm going to admit, even though I'm a female, I'm not. I seriously doubt I'm going to be anywhere near as gracious with this topic as you are, because I'm just so disgusted. And like I said, I'm raising a child, and I can't look him in the face and tell him he has a future, and I'm really sick of it.
Yes.
It works on you. And so I'm not going to be really particularly nice about this. I know that you will be. So I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and then I'll let you handle it. Maybe you'll be more delicate about it.
I hope not.
all these women who think, oh, look, I've got hybrid babies out there. No, you don't. There are no hybrid babies. EBs don't have a genetic number. And this is very heavily linked to the missing fetuses. So I'm going to explain it the way I want to, and then I want you to explain it the way you feel might be better. In the first book I wrote a lot about genetic engineering in terms of stem cells and how a stem cell has no identity. They did experiments where they found out, well, if I add vitamin E to a stem cell, it might turn into a nerve cell, and so forth. So they know that there are external factors involved in getting a cell with no identification whatsoever, really, to become something of an organized group of cells that begin to morph into what we call life. So when we're talking about all of these women who have had pregnancies that were removed, you have to remember that you're dealing with stem cells. And EBs don't have a genetic number. So this is how sick your shadow government is. Not only are they using E.B. Kraft and they are abducting you, and doing genetic experiments on you, but part of that genetic experimentation is done to create more EVs.
And to harvest stem cells for the elite, because they can reverse aging with them.
That's exactly right. In fact, there's a man who wrote a book. His name is Kevin Trudeau, and he wrote a book called, what the hell was it? I don't know, something like Healing Secrets They Don't Want You to Know. And he talked about this, and I actually worked for a man. It was the last corporate job I ever had, and that was 10 years ago. And he and his wife, once a year, went to the Bahamas for stem cell applications to remain younger. And this fellow Kevin Trudeau talked a lot about this in his books, and in fact you've even talked about, and I don't know how many times you've talked about this, publicly, but I know you've talked about it before, that diabetes can be healed in a very similar way. Although it's not a stem cell from a fetus, you're still taking cells from one human being and putting them in another, and oh, look, the problem is fixed. So do you maybe want to explain what you've talked about, the Isle of is it Langhorne in the pancreas?
Yes, it's where the insulin is produced by the cells. This method is called genetic repair, and it's been available for 40 years in some countries in Northern Europe. If you have genetic diabetes and or even functional diabetes, the cells in the Isles of Langhorne in the pancreas that produce the insulin, the count of those cells, of those healthy insulin producing cells, is low. So what they do is that they can someone that has the same blood type as you, even if some cases close, they can use them as a donor. They take a needle and extract cells from their pancreas and shoot them into yours, and in 15 minutes you're cured. You don't have diabetes anymore.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that they don't need to be insulin dependent? They don't need to destroy their pancreas to overcome diabetes? Is that what you're saying?
No. All they need is someone that'll be agreeable to donating some of their cells. It's no big deal. It doesn't harm them.
That's right.
But did you know Dianne Feinstein is now head of the House Intelligence Committee?
Oh, my God, we're in trouble.
I thought that required a brain.
I thought it required a naturalized citizen.
Right? Yeah. You've heard about these 3D printers, right? I mean, I haven't talked about this yet, Dave, but this will revolutionize so many different things. But these 3D printers got out, and the people were printing 3D guns, and they named one of them the Feinstein Special.
And it works.
It works good, yeah. All right. So anyway, back to what we were talking about before, and I do want to say, I want to defend James here because like I said, I personally have been wanting to talk about this for a very long time. Now, James has had a very different take, and he's really been much, much softer about it. And I understand why, because he used to say to me, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, James. Well, if you do, I'm going to do it anyway, but I don't think you do. He used to say to me, look, these women have been victimized enough, and I don't want to victimize, I don't want them, he doesn't want them to feel more pain than they've already went through by knowing the truth. But I'm at a place in my life, as a mother, as a wife, as a human being, where I know we won't survive if we don't know the truth. So I'm not doing this because I want to make women who have been abducted multiple times and have had multiple fetuses removed and who have been led to believe that they're just making cosmic babies. That's a lie. And I'm not saying it's a lie to bring them more grief. I'm saying it's a lie because I want them to have a shot, a real shot at the perpetrators. And they need to know that they need to take one. It isn't right. So when we talk about stem cells, and we talk about EBs, and we talk about fetuses, we're talking about the same thing. They're babies that they thought were going to grow up and become their children, were experiments by a shadow government completely out of control. There are no hybrid children. EBs cannot procreate any more than a fetus can. It's impossible. So what are we to make then of people who, have made a really good living, let's not forget, off of saying, well, I've got 12 star children out there. It's bullshit. They don't. Look, you cannot cross a human being and an EB. You can't mate a human being with your computer. You can't do it. I don't want them to feel more pain than they've already gone through. What I want is for them to seek justice for the wrongs that were done to them. And they were wronged. There are no hybrid children. I don't care who says I've got 12 alien kids out there. No, they don't. No. But you have to remember the deal. The deal. Look, if you just include this in everything you say, we'll make sure that you get best-selling books and you get the tour, and that's what it's about. Yeah. We can't survive that. We can't survive that. It's not true. We really need to begin to understand how sick these people are. They're sick. Sick, sick, sick. They're removing unborn babies from women for their experiments. That's sickening. It's horrifying. They have to be stopped. And when people, you get these really, really wonderful people like Catherine Austin Fitts, for example. She'll talk all day long about the black budget, but she doesn't know what's in it. She knows there is one. She doesn't know what it's for. This is part of it. This is part of where it's going. These people can't remain in power anymore. They can't. We have to remove them. They can't keep pushing the buttons because for a lot of women out there, that button meant, oh, look, you're not pregnant anymore. That's sickening. It is. It's wrong. There are no hostile ETs. But we've been bred to believe through television, right? Well, look at Star Trek. Look at Star Wars, David Icke's stupid bullshit about the evil moon matrix and the Death Star moon. That's crap. It's all crap. But they are not going to continue to be funded if they say the truth.
No.
That disturbs me, because if we don't have the truth, we won't survive it.
No.
We won't. Now, there is one kind of strange caveat when it comes to hybrid children, the way that people think of that. And we have a mutual friend, Jerry Wills, who in that sense could be considered a hybrid in that he's half blonde and half us. That's a huge, that's a half a planet away from.
Well, he's a full blonde, Crystal.
Is he? I didn't know.
Yeah.
I thought maybe.
Yeah, he's full blonde. It's just that for some reason they decided to stick him in with the population, and I will tell you, he is full-blooded blonde.
Well, I'm glad you said that. I didn't really know. I thought, well, maybe. I mean, I have a family member who personally may actually be half and half that way. But we're not we're talking about sentient beings mating with sentient beings. We're not talking about trying to mate with your toaster. You can't do that. You just can't do it. And so the ultimate message that I'm hoping that we're going to leave people with, going back to what we said what I said in the very beginning of the show, because I'm not speaking for James, and believe me, if I get anything wrong, he knows I want him to correct me. I want to hear his 2 cents. Going back to the beginning of the show, people are participating in their own demise out of ignorance. And there's only one way to stop that. They have to be told the truth. And then they have to hold the people who have violated them in their life and their privacy and their DNA, for God's sake.
Yes.
They have to be held accountable. And we can't keep pushing it off. It's just like I said. It's like this really awful cartoon where they go abduct people and say, oh, look, E.T. did it. So if we go back to the Star Wars and the Star Trek thing, oh, there's just war everywhere in space. When have you ever in your life, with all the satellites we have, actually seen evidence of that? There isn't any. But you heard Reagan say, we would all come together if there was a threat from space. You know, there is no threat from space. There is no threat from Al-Qaeda. You can't go from Al-Qaeda to Space Qaeda and expect decent people to believe it. It's not true. It's the same people over and over and over again, and they just go, it's just like that story I said with the kid shooting staples at the teacher. Oh, look, he did it. And we go crucify the wrong person. We can't fix it like that. So, and we have to fix it. We have to fix it. You know, during that New Year's Eve show we did, Dave, there was a Native American on there, and I didn't hear the entirety of his name. It was something Standing Horse. What was his name? Did I get that right?
Gerald Whitehorse Standing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally messed that up. Gerald Whitehorse Standing. I'm very sorry. But, you know, he talked about, how when you rob someone of their culture, and he was talking about Native Americans. And what I didn't get the chance to get across is their history has been stolen from them, and our history has been stolen from us. And if they weren't, we would know it was the same history. There's no Native American versus white man history. It's all been screwed up. We all have the same history. And you know, James and I have talked about this before. I've written articles about it. The reason they're hiding the archaeological finds is not just the technology. It's the records of what happened before. They don't want us to know what happened before, the way it happened, because then we would know that they're using it for a playbook. And that's really where we're at. You can't take people like Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot seriously when out of one side of her mouth she's saying, oh, I got all these whistleblowers, they're going to fix everything. But she constantly has to bring it back to some Anunnaki bullshit. There's no Anunnaki. There's no reptilians. There's no race out there that wants what we have, because I can assure you if they did, they would already have it. And you and I would never be the wiser. You know?
Long before we messed it up.
Right? That's the other thing. So, yeah. So everything's destroyed, but now they want it. You know, it doesn't work like that. And the day that I go, the reptilians, it's all bullshit. These people are talking out of both sides of their mouth, and in doing so, are robbing you of the clarity that you need to address the people that are really bringing you the problems. It's blame shifting.
You know what they're doing, Crystal? They're competing with Hollywood.
Oh, totally, yeah. Can I get my 15 minutes of fame?
Yeah.
And you know what really blows my mind about this, James, is that people will believe that bullshit. Or people like George Kavassilis, for God's sakes, really? That, oh, he's been to these other dimensions, and are you serious? Are you serious? But you won't take James Horak seriously when he can tell you what I just said is on Soho's satellite image. It's right there.
Well, I don't talk about anything I can't point to.
Well, and that's the thing, right? So people will believe this crazy, crazy, crazy garbage coming from people like Kavassilis and, oh, if we just raise our vibration. You know, Walter Russell, who was friends with Tesla, sent Tesla some of his work, and Tesla told him to lock it up for 1,000 years because people weren't ready yet. And I got his home study course a couple of years ago from a friend. And this course was designed in the 1950s, and Walter Russell was talking about how stupid people are for wanting to raise their vibration. They've been doing that forever. Have you ever seen anybody ascend?
No.
People think that the New Age is new. No, it's not. They've been doing this for 50 years and never got anywhere.
May I say something? I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And, here's the other thing. So I tried to explain this in the first book, which is no longer available unless you want to pay $4,000 for it to a private seller, and I don't recommend it because it's out of date. But I talked about what is frequency. The people using this word don't even know what it means, and the gurus cashing in on these people's stupidity aren't going to tell them what it means. It's how frequently something happens. What is the something? What is the something? Now, if you're Raymond Rife and you want to raise the vibration, you're killing pathogens. You're exploding them. That's how that works. He raised their vibration to the point they exploded. So it's just, look, I know that a lot of people are afraid. They're afraid. They don't think that they're capable of handling what's happening. But I know that they have been bred not to think that they're capable, because whom does that serve, right? Does that not serve the powers that be? Does it not serve the powers that be to have all these New Age nincompoops out there saying you don't actually have to do anything to change your situation? Does that not translate into don't challenge the powers that be? It absolutely does. Religion does the same thing. Oh, Jesus has to come and fix it because you sure as hell can't. And I have had this conversation with a very, very dear friend of mine who is a reborn Christian. And I asked him, I said, because he's like, oh, it's written in stone, the tribulation, and we can't do anything about it. And I said, how can you sit there and do nothing? How can you do nothing? And this person said to me, oh, I fight evil every day. You see the cognitive dissonance in that. Because if we were all really fighting the little evils every day, would we have the big evils we have now? Would it have spiraled out of control to the point it is? If people just didn't throw up their hands and say, well, I looked at it and processed it, so I'm done. Well, Jesus is going to come and fix it, so I'm done. We need people to grab a bucket and help bail. The ship is sinking, and it's sinking faster than the people who realize it's sinking can bail the water out. And so this, for me, is a big part of why I even do these shows. What's in the way? The social engineering, which is mind control, which is basically what we said earlier. Your perceptions are not your own. Your conclusions are not your own. You are being managed. You are being handled. And you're being handled in ways that are going to keep you participating in your own demise out of ignorance so that you won't fight back. You gotta start fighting back. I can't fix it by myself. James can't fix it by himself. People have to know what's going on. Enough people have to know what's going on that there are enough of us bailing water that we can get the boat to shore. And we can't do it with all the garbage that's going on. So the reality is that black ops are behind the abductions. They're the ones doing it. They use the EBs as another tool in their toolbox. The EBs have abilities that they don't have as far as their ability for mind control. And not only that, but James has some really interesting insights, because this is another interesting thing that I got from Carla Turner's work that I was fortunate enough to have read before I met James. Carla Turner recounted, I don't know if you're familiar with her, Dave, or even the listeners, but she was in the abduction field and she was a speaker. And she was talking about a time when she had people over at her home when there was an abduction going on. But so there was somebody, she had people staying over, kind of like Whitley Strieber used to, hey, look, come and experience the weirdness with me. Somebody was at her home in a bedroom and they were yelling for help. And they said that they could see through the ceiling and that there was a helicopter, but that was the only person in the room who could see it, which meant it wasn't real. It was being done in the mind. Otherwise, everybody would have seen it. James has some really interesting things to say about this in terms of power, dirty power, how things can be transmitted. And if you would like to share a little bit of that with us here, I think that would be great, James.
The phenomena of the ET abduction takes several forms. There's the shadow people, the MIB. They're the illusion of other types of life forms, the thin, tall, almost insect-like looking EB. All of these add to the fear factor. All of these are designed to help implement whatever they want to turn this into later on, like the hostile ET thesis, which they want more than anything. And they have paid a great many people in the alternative media to peddle this. They've assured them their books would be published. They're assured them they'd have speaking engagements. That's how the cottage industry works, in the alternative media and the ufology media, both. So with the shadow people, they can expose you to a wavelength of light where you can't really see what's going on. And you see, in this instance, the people that have had these experiences with the shadow people only see them as a reflection off a television screen. The television is turned off, or a mirror or something. What they'll see is generally a figure of an EB. Now, that may or may not, an EB may or may not be associated with that in particular. It may be a projection of how they interpret it because that's what they've been fed for 40 years now, the EB. The EB is the ET. So, all of this goes right back to psychic blinding and also a psychic image that's already imprinted on the mind. We have, humans here have an inability to see very well something that they're not prepared to understand. They have, their mind will jump into a safety net, or it will recreate something to fit what they're familiar with, because it's like a fainting. When do you faint? You faint whenever something makes you so uncomfortable that the mind goes into overload. Well, the same is true with sight. When you see something that is so far out there, that is so terrifying to you, you can do the same thing, but you won't faint. What you do is you just blot it out, and the mind rebuilds it to fit whatever you're comfortable with or more comfortable with. So there are a lot of people that when they go to recover lost memories with a psychologist or psychiatrist or hypnotherapist, when they go in, this person may have had experience with abductees and may not have. But I have suggested over and over again, because of my experience with dealing with several hypnotherapists when I was on a mind control forum, that these people are approached sooner or later by covert black ops and said, you need to do our follow-up for us if you want to stay in business. You don't want any trouble. And I think there is a quantity of them that do. And one of the reasons I say this is when I was on this particular forum, it's called Mind Control L. When I was on it, there were a number of very well-known hypnotherapists, and one day I sent an email to 5 or 6 of them the same time, I'll ask the same question. How many of your abductees who had their abduction experience within so many yards of a power grid? None of them would answer me or have anything to do with me after I asked that question. I thought that was suspicious. Wasn't decisive in any way, but it started me looking more and more into what they were doing. I read some of their books, read some of the things about them, but more importantly, I met a lot of the ladies that were being treated by them. And after talking with them, they began to see some things that they had already become suspicious about.
And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about Carla Turner and having a guest at her home that was hysterical, thinking she could see a black helicopter through the ceiling. She was the only one who could see it. She was the only one being targeted. So these are not necessarily real events. But in order to sell the hostile alien thesis, they need to be perceived as real events. And I think it's really interesting, too, what James said about, or has said about, not in this show, and I would like him to talk about it a little bit, about the type of electricity we're using and how it's too close to our own human thought patterns. And before you get into that, though, I do want to emphasize again that we're talking about misuse of technology, misuse of technology, misuse of technology. And where James and I really meet on common ground is not just that we're going to, if we don't address these things and hold these people accountable, that we're going to see the extinction of the human race for the final time. It's more than that. It's more about the mechanisms involved that people need to begin to see through to take their power, to take their mind back. Their mind has not been their own. And they don't know that because they're not familiar with social engineering. They don't understand how manufactured consensus works. They don't know that their thoughts aren't their own. And that's what we need to change. And the way electricity is used, this is really interesting. I've never felt this before. It's kind of a weird thing, and people can disregard it if they want to, but there has been this massive superstorm we had, the polar vortex, they're just making stuff up now. It's really pathetic for, what they're doing. Like a polar vortex is normal, right? So it's a new term it's the new normal. Yeah. Well, we won't survive that. So we need to make sure that does not become the new normal. But, when you look at all these things, at the end of the day, aside from we're perishing for lack of knowledge, we have to understand that the people that are in charge are eugenicists. They are elite psychopaths who believe that we're their property, and not just not their property in the way, oh, look, I have this golden goose. No, we're not their golden goose. We're the pain in the asses that want clean water and clean air. I mean, how terrible are we? I mean, this is so prolific throughout the entire mentality, what we call the New World Order and where they're going. It's like the military-industrial complex. People say when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When all you are is an elitist trying to hang on to your power, all you see is, how can I depopulate the slaves? And this is really what it really boils down to in the end, even the abductions by black ops and not ET. But if you wouldn't mind explaining the dirty electricity, because this past week, with what they've done, and it was absolutely HAARP, and it's always the same signature, because when we talk about the abuse of technology, we're talking about creational design. It's always creational design. That is the technology. So you see that they're learning how to decode it and reprogram it. And this is how, a bunch of do-gooders, funded by the New World Order, went into Africa and gave only the women, quote, tetanus vaccines. But those vaccines went in, reprogrammed their biological code, and now their body will actually attack a pregnancy and they're sterile. So you see them decoding creational design, not so that we can work with it, but so that they can weaponize it. And that's really important. And I don't know that the dirty electricity is a symptom of ignorance or intent, but I can tell you that and this is the first time I've ever experienced this, the last week, I've been on a very regular schedule, and the last week I couldn't sleep. And so, and I'm laying there in bed and I'm trying to sleep, but I can feel like I'm being electrically charged, but it feels dirty. The energy is dirty. I don't really know how else to explain it. It's a dirty energy. It's not working with my biological processes. It's working against it. And I really, really felt it. So tell us what you can, James, about the type of electricity we're using, and also how that may or may not be linked to how they're able to transmit scenarios into a person's mind through power lines.
It's pretty much the same way that you would put a DVD into a DVD player. It is read, creates a field, and everything's in that field. It's not on the DVD anymore, it's in the field. So it's similar to an RF, radio frequency field, which is read by your monitor, picked up, transmitted into photoelectric cells that you can see, and which have paint to them corresponding to the digital readout on the RF field. So that's pretty much what's going on with the mind. If you know how to project transmission wave that can be read a certain way in a receiver, and the mind is a receiver. It began with their obsession to interface human mind with the computer and went on from there. I personally feel, I don't know for certain, but I personally feel that they could interface the human mind with the human field as early as 1990. And I wrote an article on how it could be done and published it in UFO Digest. But I want to give, before I get into how electricity and electric fields can affect mind, I want to get into the Eldridge. A lot of people don't want to think about the Philadelphia experiment being real, but it was real. I can say that from personal experience because I know I had contact with some of the people that were involved as victims of the Philadelphia experiment.
And well, that's because you were working at the library and would read to them, right?
Well, I was in the Philadelphia Naval Hospital, and I was in the Navy, and I'd been sent back from Japan and then flown across the country to the Philadelphia Naval Hospital instead of being treated on the West Coast where I was stationed or operating out of, which a lot of people will find strange. And when I got there, I was given the job as assistant librarian. I worked for a very wonderful lady. And I also worked the medical library. And one day, Mary Contreras was the librarian's name, very sweet lady, asked me would I be interested in reading to some people. They might appreciate it greatly. I said, yeah. So that's how I got involved with some of these people that were on the Eldridge. And That being said, let me say this. The generators that were built for that experiment, and they were told they were going to try to achieve invisibility. And, of course, that wasn't a goal at all. And what happened is that Tesla wired these generators. He wired them in a way that even if they did leave a crew aboard, which he was told they wouldn't, it wouldn't harm human tissue. And after he had wired them, they were rewired. The man in charge, Dr. Newman, and when Tesla came on board, found out there was going to be a crew on board, and then checked the wiring, he could see that they'd rewired them. He walked off and he said, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. Well, those people were intentionally sent into time rifts that were created by the way in which those generators changed human tissue, charged it, so that the molecular components of their bodies would travel along these rifts. And this is, in some way, if you broadcast electricity at 60 cycles per second, that's too close to the functioning mind. It's a resonance problem, and it can cause in some people a form of hysteria. It's what they call localized hysteria, which is associated to traveling to the kind of hysteria that's developed when a person travels over 60 miles an hour for a prolonged period of time. It creates this localized hysteria, and it takes a little while to overcome it. And there's some people that notice it more than others, but it's still a state that is responsible for a lot of accidents. The mind, the split consciousness is a little more disassociative than unified consciousness anyway. But the one thing that this does is at resonance is when you go into a state of a pre-trance state, or a state where where something can be suggested to you that will affect you at the subconscious level, and might cause you to act in a way counterproductive to your welfare. So what happened in the Philadelphia experiment was an intentional experiment to test for the interdimensionalism that was suspected to exist with a split consciousness, and it actually achieved travel.
In really horrific ways.
Really horrific ways. Yeah. It changed the molecular, not only changed the molecular composition of the people, but it caused it to interact with bulkheads, and some of these people actually were conjoined. Horrible experience. And when I met them, they had had surgeries, they had had every care taken for them. They were well provided for, as well as could be. Maybe because they still were interested in studying them, because they had been where no one had been before.
There were after effects.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there were. These people were otherworldly, let me put it that way. They were kind of like in between two worlds.
Were these people a true interpretation of what happens if you raise your vibration?
Now that isn't funny, Crystal.
I know. Look, I'm being a smart ass just because
you're being a smart. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Well, I'll tell you what. I cared a great deal for them. I didn't talk about them until just a couple of years ago when I was on the Kevin Smith show, and I had talked about them to Kevin, And Kevin said, how do you feel about talking about them? I said, well, it's been all this time. This happened to me back in 1962, 63. So I felt like I could talk about them. And, I felt an emotional tie with them. I go up and read to them.
Well, you give a damn about the human condition, which sets you apart automatically in this day and age. But how does that equate to transmitting scenarios from power lines?
It is the same kind of energy, basically. What you're doing is, they're matching. All they have to do is match, a form of field between they've got all this power coming off this power source, and they can generate a scenario in a field, and it's in range of the mind. And of course they've already they've already started this pre-trance state. It could be a form of radiation. It could be any number of things, but they target specific people. Generally, these are people that have already had some kind of experience preparatory to setting them up for this. I doubt that it would be done on a first time basis, that they had already had.
That's really important what you just said, James, and I don't mean to interrupt, because you and I have mutual friends who know people who had abductions by not abductions, but experiences with real ETs, which are very rare, but they do happen. But then who comes along with the mind control crap and muddies up what they know to be true?
Well, that's the MIB phenomena, and it's not the same. That's right. I mean, they have you believe that it's always a black Cadillac, late model Cadillac, early model Cadillac, comes up, and people step out wearing black suits and shades and all that. Well, that's typical of a lot of these episodes, but the MIB is a projection that what you're seeing is not what's there, and it's a projection, and it's like they've already profiled you, and they know where your worst fears are. They know how to play with you.
Well, and your disposition towards religion. So maybe Jesus needs to pay you a visit.
Even on X-Files, it was real interesting whenever Fox Mulder had an experience investigating an ET or a UFO incident, and this MIB shows up. One of them is the show host Alex Trebek, and the other one is Jesse Ventura. and they just, and I'm thinking, well, they must have known what would really tickle his fancy. It's got to be bizarre. It's got to make you look like a fool when you try to tell somebody about it. That's the point of it. They are putting you into making yourself disassociate from the experience. That's the MIB objective. And I've, now with me, I see, I've had that, attempt on me before. And of course, I see what's there. I can't be hypnotized. I see what's there for what it is. And they turn and run and hide. But, my first experience with one of these projectors, a person that could project a MIB experience, was when I was coming back from emergency leave. right after boot camp, I went on a ship, and I was on a ship a few months, and my grandfather died. So I was trying to get to him before he died. When I was coming back to the ship, had a layover in Albuquerque, and I met this guy. And he was amazed that I could see him for what he really was. And so he was kind of fascinated, sat down, and we started talking, and it got into a really bizarre conversation. Well, I didn't give him my name. He didn't give me his. Later on, I found out who he was because he lived here in Fort Worth. He had died, and his niece that had inherited his estate came into a shop a friend of mine was working in, and asked the guy that had the shop, do you know anybody who knows anything about Oriental antiques? I just inherited this house, and it's full of Oriental antiques, and I want to remodel the house, redecorate it, and I thought maybe I could sell some of the antiques for the money. And so I went over there, and when I walked in the house, I saw this same MIB's picture on the dresser when I walked through the bedroom. And that's when I learned that this guy was a magician. He was longest standing president of the International Magician Guild, a real socialite here in Fort Worth, had a stage in his home where he performed for the elite of Fort Worth. And when I started asking about him, in magician circles, I found out that was a big no-no. They were uptight about that I even knew his name.
And this is, this is something that it took me a while to understand, because I don't have abduction experiences in my life. I have extended family members who do, but I don't. Is that, first of all,
I can tell you why you don't, Crystal.
Oh, tell me. I would like to know.
You own your own mind. One of the very few people I know that absolutely do own their own mind.
You bet your ass I do, and I'm really protective of it. My mind is mine. Stay out of it. And that's one of the reasons, and a lot of people don't understand this. For a, quote, public figure, I'm very private. My mind is mine. I share what I want to share, and I share what I believe will help us have a future, and that should be enough for people. And if it isn't, there's not much more I can do about it. So, my mind is mine. Stay out of it. Yeah.
You could get along with off-Earth people very well.
I would, you know what? I've come to understand, especially after I wrote the second book, that I have an awful lot in common with off-Earth people, because I already understand why they don't have the same sense of humor we do, which I wrote about in the second book. Because our humor here as human beings is based on our folly. And once we outgrow it, what we view as humor will go by the wayside. We will have far more important things to do. That old saying, well, if you're going to tell people the truth, you better make them laugh. So there's a need, a very real need for comedian. I love witty people. They're my favorite because, in my mind, they're the most intelligent. They get it. But I can understand that if we, because, the wit is based on helping people make fun of themselves for their own stupidity so that they'll outgrow it. So when we outgrow it, there won't be need for the kind of humor that we have. It will be very different. And I'm very much looking forward to that day. And that's a big part of, timing is everything. I have wanted to get this out in the open for so long, and we tried with Randy Moggins. Didn't go very well, but we tried. But it's really important that we get it out, especially now, because we have the Fukushima thing happening. And, why is that important? There's he was a Canadian prime minister. He's like 90 years old. And when he first came out, I don't know his name. I'm bad with names.
Hellyer.
Okay, Hellyer. When he first came out, I could tell instantly that the moment he tried to come out and tell his story, the New Agers grabbed a hold of him and fed him a bunch of bullshit. But now, he's worked through that and has publicly said recently that they have technology that they would give us to make our world better if we could just get our act together.
That's right.
Getting our act together means we civilize the technology. And this is crucial now because what's happening at Fukushima, we can't fix. We do not have the ability on this planet to fix. We don't have it. If we really want to survive it, we're going to need help from elsewhere. And we won't get it if we don't clean up our act. And which means, if we distill that and translate it, if we want to survive, we need help. And if we want that help, we're going to do what it requires to get it. And this is where people get stuck, and this is what frustrates me so much. People want me to save them, right?
Yeah.
People want someone else to save them. So we're at a place where the human condition is so backwards and upside down. Billions of human beings will not lift a finger to save themselves because social engineering, especially through religion and the New Age community, taught them, well, you don't need to. You're going to get raptured out of here. You're going to ascend out of here to the fifth dimension. Look, if you can really ascend to the fifth dimension, hey, don't let me get in your way. Get the hell out of here and let the grown-ups take care of business while you're gone. It doesn't happen. How many people do you know? Oh, we're going to ascend to a fifth dimension. Yeah. None of those people have been to the fifth dimension or they wouldn't have come back. It's all bullshit. It's bullshit. Yeah. And the reason people eat it up is because they want to be patted on the head. Yeah, you're good. You don't have to change anything. Who does that serve? It serves the powers that be. Oh, honey, don't fight it. It's just going to happen no matter what. Jesus has to save you. Don't fight us. You can't win. It's disgusting. It makes me want to vomit in my mouth. I'm so sick of hearing it. We can't survive off of that kind of stupidity. There's no future for us if we can't pull our head out of our socially engineered asses. It doesn't benefit us to not fight to survive. And that's how bad it is that the survival instinct has been suppressed. So you have all these people, hey, George Kavassilis, tell me what it's like out there in the fifth dimension. Yeah. Well, meanwhile, the starfish on your planet are melting from radiation, moron. Pay attention.
Right.
I'm really disgusted by it. And I'll tell you, Randy Moggins once asked me what I thought of George Kavassilis. And I told him, I said, do you not recall him saying he had interactions with the Greys? Do you not recall him saying he knows his mind has been messed with? He admitted it. Okay? So one of the reasons it's so important for James and I to explain that EBs are black ops, because you'll find that every single well-known personality in the New Age media has had interactions with Greys. Look at Anelia Benz. Well, the Creator really doesn't care about the outcome, but I'm here to change it on behalf of the Creator. Okay, well, she played with Greys when she was young. What she's telling you is her mind has been played with. It's not her own anymore. George Kavassilis, don't you remember what he was selling in the beginning? What was that? The Galactic Federation of Light. Oh, then he had an epiphany. No. They were the bad ETs, and now I'm with the good ETs. It's all mind control. Anybody who's telling you that they have been, that they have had that they have had experiences with grays. What we're telling you is translate that into Black Ops mind control. It's the same. And their message is always the same. Oh, well, you're suffering for a great cause. You're the baby manufacturer of hybrid children. No, you aren't. Oh, look, the world is going to ascend to a fifth dimensional reality. Uh-huh. No, you aren't. Oh, look, Jesus is going to come and save you, so don't fight us. No, he isn't. The man was murdered for trying to tell people how to live right 2,000 years ago by their own story. He was murdered 2,000 years ago for trying to do the right thing and for trying to teach us to do the right thing. Are we doing it? No. Can't be surprised, There are no hostile ETs. And this is super important. James mentioned, I don't know, it was a YouTube video or something you posted of someone who was talking about the difference between, it might have been Douglas Dietrich, I'm not sure. It was the difference between Chernobyl and Fukushima. When Chernobyl happened, there was a lot of ET involvement in that. With Fukushima, there was in the beginning, but there's not anymore because we aren't saving ourselves. And look, we all know this story. It's not, look, this isn't rocket science. You just have to get your head out of the New Age ninnies behind long enough to face reality. And the reality is, Fukushima is burning and burning and burning and burning. Starfish don't melt. That's not normal. And you see this jackass, Benjamin Fulford, and all of his idiot minions put out this thing today about how we're just fearmonger alarmists. Right, because starfish melt all the time. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. These people are encouraging you to participate in your own demise out of ignorance for $1 and for their 15 minutes of fame. You don't owe them a goddamn thing. You owe your children and your grandchildren a whole hell of a lot, including yourself, and that's a future. And if these people can't get with the program, then you need to get them out of the way. And that's the reality of our reality.
Amen. I love this.
It's disgusting.
So do I, because I'm right there with you.
Right on. So you have a bucket in your hand and your back is tired from bailing because all the other people won't help, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got a big bucket, too.
I do too, and I've got one for each hand, and I'm tired. And, part of me doesn't even want to bail for these moral imbeciles. But I can't survive if I don't.
That's right. That's right. I know it. I keep thinking that if once they go hungry for 2 days, then they'll start thinking. And because there's no reason why an American should go hungry for 2 days. And once their money isn't worth anything, there's no good reason for these things to happen. There wasn't any good reason for it to happen in Germany in 23. But it was all engineered.
Yes, engineered. That's right.
In 1929, what happened? It's real simple. There was a boom. There were more millionaires then per capita than there are now. And there was a big boom. Everyone who was trying to expand their businesses and everything and borrowing money to do it and depending upon loans and so forth to grow. Suddenly, all the investment capital is pulled out of the market. By who? By the bankers. And everything fell through the cracks. Everything fell. That was an engineered, controlled, precisely timed crash.
Yeah, it's all precisely owned and timed. by the people behind it, and we're just the mindless idiots that go, oh, look, the guy on TV said this is the way we should go. We have to stop doing that. I mean, I think that 2014 is going to be a really good year. This is kind of my wrap-up quote. Because what I saw, you know, we're all going to die in 2012. I remember the first interview I ever did was in the end of 2009 with Mel Fabregas on Veritas, and I told people, it doesn't make sense. Do you really think the creator just hates you and is going to kill you for no good reason? That's stupid. But I couldn't get past it. In fact, James was on Mel's forum at the same time. It's the only forum I've ever been on. I was only on it for about 3 months. It was called the Manticore Forum. And I remember in 2010, because this was a forum that was largely populated by UFO people. You know, I'm not a UFO person. I don't think, you know, they're not our problems, so I don't really worry about that too much. But I remember in 2010, a bunch of people went to a big UFO conference somewhere. I don't think it was in Laughlin. It might have been the last one in Laughlin. I can't remember. And they came back on the forum and said the presenter on the very first day, the very first person to present at the conference got up and said, we're all going to die in 2012. Get right with God. I mean, it was so paralyzing and gripping. And then you have people, I think it was Spielberg, or it was a big name like that in Hollywood, making the same kind of claims. Well, you know, just get right with God. Okay, so that was the fire escape exit, because people are cowards. They're cowards. But they're not cowards because it's natural to be a coward. They have been bred to be cowards. It's not their natural nature. An individual who won't fight for their own survival, that's not normal. So I don't really blame the individual as so much as the social engineering that has gone into, you know, you can't do anything about it, you shouldn't do anything about it because you're not capable, that whole thing. It was the fire escape exit, but I will say, like I did say on your New Year's Eve show, Dave, that I think an awful lot of people were hoping that they would get that out so they wouldn't have to fight. Well, they didn't get it. So 2013 was really exceptional. I think 2014 will be even better because now all these people realize, crap, you know, I better get involved or I don't have a future. And that's really what every show that James and I do is about, trying to understand where are people stuck, where are the roadblocks, where are they coming from, and can we, hopefully, with some common sense, remove those roadblocks. And that's what we're really trying to do. I think 2014 will be a good year, and I think we started it off right by talking about what we're talking about. Abductions are black ops. That's your shadow government. There are no hostile ETs doing this. And if Fukushima continues, we're going to need help from elsewhere. And we're not going to get it if we are, you know, look, if we're just going to lay down and die, oh, look, I looked at it and I processed it, so I'm good. It doesn't work like that. If we can't get people out of that mindset, if we can't get people to understand why their own lives matter and why they should fight for it, I don't think we have a future.
We don't deserve one.
They don't deserve one. That's for damn sure. And that's what sucks about it, because there's so many of us who know better. But we're not the majority. So we're going to be punished for their stupidity and their arrogance and their greed. You know, Kerry Cassidy and David Icke and George Kavasilis have sold out their own race for $1 and 15 minutes of fame. And it's sickening.
Or they're just completely damaged goods, but know how to pander to the popular myths. Whatever is going along with them, I mean, it's ludicrous.
You know, I really try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I went with the damaged good thing, you know, the damaged goods thing with these people as long as I could tolerate. They know better. They just don't care.
Yeah, I think you're right. I really do. I really do.
Their priorities are so upside down and ass backwards. If those are the people we have to depend on for our survival, forget it.
Well, I saw a lot of disingenuity in that interview that Carrie Cassidy did with Dr. Bergman. It disgusted me. And it was how she avoided following up on so many questions. And you see, he's an elderly man. And she tried to corral him into that hostile ET crap, and he didn't fall for it, though. She tried.
Yeah, she tried. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing about these people, and we really have to get that. These people have taken the deal that Alan Watt has talked about. There's no rational explanation for what they're doing otherwise. There just isn't. You know, they clearly do not get the reality of our situation, meaning that within 12 months we may see the end of the human race forever. They don't get that. What they're worried about is, how many followers do I have? Am I getting donations? How many people watch my YouTube video? Am I popular? You're not going to be popular when you're dead.
That's right.
You know.
That's right.
So we just have to get that straight. And so, and you know, I just really love being on your network, Dave, because you don't give us any flack about anything we say. And I really appreciate that, because we have tried, James and I have tried, and you feel like you're stepping on eggshells, you know, with show hosts, because you can't go farther than they want to go or are paid to go. And we don't have those kinds of glass ceilings here, and it's really refreshing. So as much as I was a little miffed in the beginning at the way you got us on this show, I'm really grateful that you did it.
Oh, he was a sly dog, I tell you.
He was a sly dog, but I'm grateful for it, Dave. So I don't have anything else to contribute tonight. We went way over.
Well, you named some names, didn't you, my dear?
You know what? I didn't want to, but at the same time,
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did.
I mean, these are the poster children for the New World Order's finger going back and forth. No.
Yeah.
You don't get to challenge us. You bet your ass I do, and I will every chance I get.
Well, you know, you haven't said anything that isn't abundantly clear to anybody that really scrutinizes them. Everyone you've named. And they're good people out there. They're good people that have shows. There are a lot of things I don't necessarily agree with, but I know that the people believe it, and that they're trustworthy, and that they are growing with what, you know, they're discovering, they're going on. But now the people you named, no. They're charlatans.
Yes, they're snake oil salesmen that are, and you know, this is what's really sad, and my husband and I talk about this all the time. And I'm really lucky. I'm actually going to celebrate my 17th year anniversary on Valentine's Day. I have a really awesome husband, and we both get it, and we talk about this a lot, and it's so very true. People are, you know, when it comes to Kavasilis or Analia Benz or any of these other yahoos, these new age nincompoops, or even your local pastor, what they're telling you is, don't fight what's happening.
Yeah.
You're not capable. You know, who does that serve? It doesn't serve us. We are literally facing oblivion. We are looking over the edge. And if we don't fix it, we're going to get there. I don't want to get there. I believe what James says about why the human race is so different and why it would be such an exceptional addition to the universe if we contain and civilize our technology. But we have to understand that the outward use of the technology is a reflection of the inward mind that uses it, as well as the minds that tolerate it. So We want to change minds. We want people to fight for their right to exist. And exist free and healthy and happy. We want them to fight for it. Because I can't do it myself. James can't do it himself. And you see all these morons talk completely just I don't even have a word for it. How they can screw up the idea of collectivism to the point that, well, you can't get into groups because then you're just another ding dong that's following the, look, we have to come together. I don't care if you smoke. I don't care if you eat beef. I don't care if you like video games. I don't care if you like wine. What I care about is your life and your future. And I want you to care about my life and my future and the future of my children and the future of your children. And if we can meet on that common ground that we all want a future, we'll get it. And we'll get it together. What happens after that, people can go, start their little farms with meditation. And look, I don't care what happens after that. I just want to get there. And we can't get there from here.
We certainly can't get there if we let them privatize all natural resources, including water. We can't get there. We can't get there if we let them carve out a continent so they can have their inland sea. We can't get there if we let them create earthquakes, do more damage to the planet, make targets out of nuclear reactors so that they can make a lot of money on the commodities market over what becomes radioactive and what doesn't. All
of
these
Trans-Pacific Partnership, the greed. We live on a planet where death is the biggest business this planet has ever seen. Ever.
Well, it's the rest. Even if they could ship all the rest of us off somewhere else rather than kill us, if they could do that, and they got the earth the way they want it and everything, they would be at each other's throats. There's not enough for any of them. They would be at each other's throats. What they're doing is they're just building a recipe for war between themselves. 600 corporations. You think they're going to be satisfied with what they have after they get rid of most of us? No. Then they'll go for each other.
That's right. And as much as I would like to really see that happen, it will happen in the order that you said, and we won't survive it. And I've said over and over and over again, they are killing nature to kill us, and that's the God's honest truth. And from what I could glean, from what little value I could find in videos of the report from Iron Mountain, this was part of the plan, that they wanted people to believe the environment was really destroyed, so that people, that was the precursor to the hostile alien thesis, which would be the cherry on top,
Well, they've ratcheted up, Crystal, because people are not falling for the global warming myth, so they have to ratchet up some real damage to the environment. And, if they can...
They've gone too far. They
have gone too far. Well, they've gone too far. We cannot heal the damage to the planet unless we have help from outside. That's all there is to it. When those reactor cores went through the containment and are on their way to the mantle of the earth, that's sheer doom. We don't know how far they've gone because they've lied to us, have kept us in the dark. Not until they hit the aquifers beneath the concrete containment did we know they had gone all the way through any containment at all, and we're on the way to the core, to the mantle. And if they hit the mantle,
yeah, that's right. So I don't have anything more to add tonight. Dave has been super gracious about letting us go over, but I do want to say that our next show, which is the 4th Friday of this month in 2 weeks, we're going to discuss Fukushima again. I'm very much hoping to get Kevin Blanche and Andrew Ibis. I guess it's not Ibisu. The U is silent. I want to get them back on the show, and I'm pretty sure that they'll be here. And even if they aren't, we have plenty to talk about. But we need people to understand how bad that is. And you get jackasses like Benjamin Fulford out there. There's no radioactivity in Japan. Yeah. So, it's just,
he needs to go there. The properties have really fallen in value around Fukushima. He could get a really nice penthouse somewhere, probably for $300 a month.
Well, look, he supposedly lives there. Supposedly.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I feel the same way about it. Yeah, it's just disgusting. Look, Fukushima was done on purpose. The Gulf of Mexico was done on purpose. GMOs,
yes.
Fluoride, vaccines, it's all done on purpose. All of these animals dying, whether they're fish or they're mammals, this goes back to depopulation, Agenda 21, because they're trying to teach our children in school through their curriculum, well, honey, you're killing the planet by being born, but if you just, don't breathe and eat or live in a big home, you can fix it. You know what? Kiss my ass. That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
Yes.
Yeah. The precautionary principle, well, we should just behave as though it's bad until we know for sure. Yeah. Did they do that with vaccines? Fukushima? HARP? Fluoride? GMOs? No, they didn't. These people are talking out of both sides of their mouth, and so are half of your gurus in the alternative media. And if you can't wake up and snap out of it, they're going to lead you to your death.
That's right. They're
dangerous. Yeah. So that's all I have to say for tonight. But it'll be a good show. Our next show will be a good show, and we'll get deeper into it. So.
And I would like to add this: tell your friends, your neighbors, and your enemies about Wolf Spirit Radio, because here's where you're going to find the truth. And if you don't like it here, you're free to go somewhere else. Just don't cause any bullshit in my chat room, because I ban and I ignore right now. And I am so glad I hoodwinked you two into coming over here. Golly.
I am too.
I am too.
You did hoodwink us, but it was for a good cause, and we're not mad. It's a good thing. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you can still come up and visit and bring your son so he can play with my wolf before my wolf makes a trip across the bridge.
I know. I will do my best. I actually don't have a car. We have one vehicle. It's for our business. So, I live a simple life. I really do. I don't have money coming out of my ears. We go without a lot so that I can do what I do. But if it works, I get a future. So that's okay with me.
If you two are ready to wrap it up, I have just the going out song by John Trudeau called "It Is What It Is."
I like
it.
You ready
Very
to
good.
go?
Good night,
I'm
my
ready to go.
friends.
We'll see you in 2 weeks, folks.
Perfect.
It is what it is. So no use in wishing, hoping, and wanting. And those if only and those coulda, shoulda, and wouldas are just troubles for the head. And crying around about most anything is just a waste of tears. It is what it is. It is what it is. Life doesn't put anything in front of us that we can't handle. It's all in the handling. Coherent or incoherent. Clarity or chaos. Another thing. Everything that ever happens is there to make us stronger. And when we understand, our strength gets stronger. And when we don't understand, our weaknesses get stronger. It's an inevitability. It is what it is. It is what it is. And when falling down, falls down, how down, and falling down,
falls down, how down, and falling down, fall.
And when getting back up, gets back up, how up can getting back up, get back up? In the reality of being, reality waits for human recognition, to recognize the power of intelligence clearly used is a way of seeing, curing, healing spirit. It's not about whether we can or can't. It's about whether we will or we won't.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. The blamers and the blamed,
The blamers and the blamed
play a dangerous game,
play a dangerous game.
turning responsibility into another one of their casualties inside of ourselves and amongst ourselves, desperating while hidden behind the light cast by our shadows. Life holds its breath, and alive wants us to live the gift we were given. It's a decision we make.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. So no use in wishing, hoping, and wanting. And those if only, and those coulda, shoulda, and wouldas are just troubles for the head. And crying around about most anything is just a waste of tears.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.